everyone, and welcome to our first meeting of 2026 and our second meeting of the fiscal year. So glad to see everybody here again. I know that so many of you have traveled a long way, and we really appreciate that. And those of you who only traveled a few miles from home, we appreciate you also, and mainly the work that you do. You know, it's such important work, and we're so fortunate to have judges and people from all perspectives in this intensely important area of the law. And I know that you all realize that there's really nothing more important than cases dealing with families who have been allegedly or have been accused of, not being able to take care for their children, and the ramifications of that and what all is involved. And we have parent representatives, and we have people from the department and many, many judges. So thank you all for being here. We really, really appreciate it very much, and the perspective that you all bring to this very, very important work. I wanted to introduce you to someone that you may not know. First of all, I have a sad thing to tell you, and that is that Rebecca Huddle, who was our deputy, is no longer going to serve as our deputy. But it's certainly not because she didn't love the work and think it was very, very important work. But for reasons, we now have our newest justice, Justice Kyle Hawkins, who is going to be the deputy chair of the committee. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Judge Hawkins, because you're going to be very impressed. I promise you that. He previously served with the U.S. Department of Justice as counselor to the Solicitor General, where he represented the United States before the U.S. Supreme Court. Before that, he served as the Texas Solicitor General. Earlier in his career, he served as a law clerk for Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito and for Judge Edith Jones on the Fifth Circuit. So as you can see, he has quite a bit of experience. He went to Harvard undergrad, and he went to Minnesota Law School. What's the name of the exact? Minnesota Law School?
University of Minnesota.
University of Minnesota. Go Minnesota.
Golden Gopher.
So you can see he brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. He hasn't done work in this area, and so, but he clearly is brilliant, and he's going to be able to figure it out. We've already had quite a few cases before us, the 9 of us. As you all know, we're always having cases dealing with these important issues, and he's already just boning up on it, and he knows the family code almost as good as I do, but not quite. Any day now. So please help me in welcoming Justice Hawkins to our esteemed group.
Thank you, Justice Lehrman. That was too kind of an introduction. I'm honored to be here. The work of this commission is critical. It touches on some of the most important issues that our state faces. And I'm very honored to be here serving the state with you and working with you and doing what I can to help Justice Lehrman and to learn from her and her rich experience. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
And as you can see just from those few short comments, he is a joy to work with, and you all are going to really love him as much as I do, and that's a lot. So it's going to be a good thing. It's a good thing. We're going to go out of order a little bit because we have such a wonderful presentation today that's going to be facilitated by the Commission's Assistant Director. Director, Milbury Rainey. And I really appreciate you all kind of all of a sudden volunteering to come out of order. But it's really every meeting we try to have one kind of focal point that we focus on, and we always get ideas at the end of the meeting, and we ask people to send in ideas for some critical thing that we need to really be dealing with. And this time it has to do with reunification of families. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Milbury.
Thank you, Justice. Good morning, everyone. My name is Milbury Rainey. I'm the Assistant Director at the Children's Commission. It's my honor to serve in that position, and it's also my honor to moderate this panel this morning. Our focus this morning, as Justice Thurman said, is to shine the spotlight on family reunification. We will hear from a parent about her experiences in her case and from her attorney and her social worker about how they provided support to her and how the case evolved. So let's start with introductions.
Hi, I'm Sunny. I'm the current social worker and I worked with Nicole throughout her full case, majority of it.
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder?
I can certainly try. My name is Sunny. I'm a social worker that worked with Nicole throughout her CPS case. Ooh, fancy.
And are you with CPS Social?
No,
Okay.
I am not.
Could you
I'm
explain
with-
that just a little bit?
Yes, I am with the Travis County Office of Parental Representation. I've been working with y'all since 2023, so been there for quite a bit.
I'm Nicole. I'm the parent who had the CPS case.
I'm Jacqueline Wilson. I'm the Chief Counsel of the Office of Parental Representation at Travis County. I have been there 13 years and I have been chief for 3 years. So Nicole was a client of ours that when I heard about this opportunity, I thought of her immediately because her story has lots of interesting tidbits of barriers that can happen. And then most notably, there will be things missing from her story that you see in the average CPS case. So as much as we talk today about how hard it was to achieve reunification for her, there's lots of things that we did not have to battle that we also have to keep in mind when we see other people's CPS case.
Thanks, everyone. So our goal for the presentation this morning is for all of us to learn from Nicole's experience and use it to improve the systems that serve children and families. So we'll start with talking about the investigation. We'll highlight the role of Nicole's attorney and social worker, and we'll end with some questions about systemic factors that made a difference and factors that could be improved in order to promote family reunification. So Nicole, I'd like to invite you to share a little bit about your experience with the investigation.
So I went to the hospital and spent 12 days there with my daughter. Medical staff basically just blew me off. They told me a lot of lies, in which I didn't find out until we had the hearing to reunify. When my attorney asked the correct questions. The investigation for me with the police was very long. But the investigation for her dad was maybe 30 minutes, if that. There was a time when they wanted to do a 30-day plan. And my Nana drove down from Tennessee and we took Riley home after the 12th day, and she was taken 24 hours after we.
So Riley didn't go with your grandma?
My grandma stayed at the house with us because they did a 30-day safety plan.
Okay.
So instead of honoring that 30-day safety plan, they removed the next day.
Did you have any other support besides your Nana?
That was all I had.
Was there anyone at the hospital that treated you well or provided you the information that was needed?
One surgeon. He was her her brain surgeon. He was the only one that gave me the information that I needed. Everyone else basically just wrote me off and didn't tell me the truth.
Did you have any support from your daughter's father?
Not really. He was there maybe an hour or two at a time. He missed both of her major surgeries. I was there by myself.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, and I know this is so difficult for you, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. I can't even imagine. Truly, truly sorry. How old was your child?
2 months.
So a baby. And what kind of surgery?
She had to have fluid removed from her brain. They had to do a temporary stick and to drain the fluid.
And nobody knows why?
They didn't do any like extensive investigations other than at the hospital, really. So unfortunately, there wasn't anything else that happened.
Heidi, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the investigation?
I think some of the other issues that came up, obviously, they're unknown injuries to her daughter, right? From the lawyer perspective, it's very hard for me to step out of that space, right? There was also some issues concerning domestic violence and power and control dynamics within the relationship that probably CPS saw and had some concern with. And then just the lack of support that Amber had or Nicole had. And so it was like her family was in another state. She didn't have, yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just wanted to ask you a question. Did anything happen after they entered that 30-day safety plan to make them change their minds, or was that just an arbitrary, we've changed our mind kind of thing?
If I had to guess, I would say that the department couldn't get it together to file before the hospital was ready to let her daughter go.
Thank you.
Knowing what I know now and seeing these cases for 17 years, that would be my guess of what happened. And then her family wasn't here. And so there was, in part also because of the patterns of domestic violence, a lot of isolation that was there, and she didn't have any supports in Texas.
Just from what Nicole described to me in those early days, where a lot of people saw her immediately as the responsible parent because she was the one there, even though the other parent was not there. And so she got a lot of ridicule and biases that really affected how, she was treated by hospital staff who, ethically are not supposed to have their own personal biases impact the quality of care.
And I think we see that a lot with unexplained injuries where the parties in the case, I don't know about the court, but the parties in the case desperately want to hold someone accountable. And so if there's one parent showing up, that's the parent they get to express their frustrations with and that they get to chastise. Even if that parent was not the one that caused the injuries or was improperly supervising when an accident happened. And so we saw a lot of that where because Nicole was the mother and because she was the one showing up and being vocal, she was on the receiving end of everyone's judgment and ill will, which is hard to navigate when you're told to cooperate on your case and collaborate for a good outcome and people are treated you poorly.
My next questions are about the services that were provided in this case. So first, Sarahi, can you talk about the services that were provided to help Nicole get her child back? And then Nicole, I wanted to invite you to please talk about the services that you found most helpful or least helpful.
Yeah, a lot of what I did with Nicole was just the emotional support, talking through what the court order services were and why she needed to like possibly do them. Kind of like if she had miscommunication with one provider, bridging that gap to make sure that she got to where she needed to be. We did a lot of psychoeducation on just like what therapy is and what is a good therapeutic relationship. And it's okay to ask your therapist questions. You're not just supposed to sit there and just do what they say. Like you have to interact on every level. I know that there was a time where she was applying for food stamps, and food stamps after 30 days didn't do anything with her application. So we had called and they were going to quote unquote expedite it, but that doesn't really mean anything. They just move it back into the queue and it'll be reviewed whenever. And by the time they reviewed her application, Nicole already got a really well-paying job, so she was able to afford food at the time, but it was a little too late. So we were fighting some systematic barriers on that front. A lot of what we did was just a lot of long phone calls and talking through what was unfair and why did she have to carry the weight of it all.
I think, honestly, all the classes that I had to take during the case have been helpful. I don't think that there is one particular like class or assignment that I had to do. Therapy, I did talk therapy, I did EMDR. I did
Can you explain what that is? Because we don't all know all those acronyms.
eye movement.
Eye movement desensitization.
Reprocessing.
Thank you.
It's for people with PTSD and traumatic histories. I myself wanted to do that. It wasn't something that they came up with, but I did two nurturing parenting classes. I did a protective parenting class. I did 3 domestic violence courses. I did therapy. I did EMDR. I had a parent coach. I had a safe advocate. Yeah, I mean, everything, in that whole, really, really helped, in the long run.
I would add to that, her original therapist, I think at first was good for building some self-esteem, which was really needed. But then that relationship, from my perspective, turned into the therapist just wanting to be Nicole's friend. Like just liked her a little bit too much, and it was like girl time rather than processing trauma so that we could make some progress in her CPS case. And so from the attorney perspective and the litigation perspective, having those conversations with Nicole about, I know you really like your therapist, but we need to get your child back. And in order to do that, this is what we've got to cover. And I don't think this therapist is capable. Would you be willing to try therapy with a different therapist? And that was a therapist who did the EMDR and made a massive difference both in the case and in Nicole's life and well-being. And so I think as litigators in this space, helping a parent achieve reunification, we also need to keep an eye on the quality of the services, because a parent can do the services and do all the actions and get the certificates, but if the life change is not accompanying that, it's not going to achieve reunification.
So from our perspective, do you think that the system as it exists was sufficient for you to be able to get Nicole into the therapist that she really would benefit from?
And no, and it's because in Travis County, there's one EMDR provider at the time, and I'm pretty sure you no longer contract with the department and took a different job. And so currently, I don't know that EMDR is available, and that is very effective at processing and treating trauma, and all of our clients have it. Even at a minimum, the nature of having a removal, that is trauma, right? This system, being here today, seeing my lovely face. As much as we adore each other and created a good bond throughout this case, interacting with us, it brings all that up. So no, she just happened to luck out because I think from OPR, my office's relationship with that one therapist, to be able to email them and say, hey, can you add my client to your service?
So if you had a crystal ball, how would you change the system to make that better?
Jacqueline, the Hayes County taxpayer, would stop pretending that community-based care is the solution. And there needs to be more accountability for the department. Failing to adequately refer services or timely file a court report or share information doesn't really have a consequence. The consequence is the parent loses out on time, on experience with their children, on the help that they actually need. And I don't see community-based care solving that. And a contempt hearing fines the department or the SSCC, and that doesn't help an actual parent get their kid back. It does not help them get a parenting class or treat their trauma. I could go on for days, but that would be my first number one, CBC and accountability.
Justice Lambert, I think there's something important that we all need to know here, that there's a social worker that works with Ms. Wilson in the office of, well, there's probably more than one, but you know, as a judge that's out in a rural area, this is a person we don't see, like they don't exist. There is not a social worker that works with the attorney's offices that represent the parents.
Right.
Like this is an absolute rarity. And so I'm excited to hear from y'all, but you know, it's depressing, I think, for some of us, because we're like, is all the things that went wrong in your case, obviously she had her child returned to her.
Right.
So that's a good outcome.
Yeah.
But for us, you know, we also measure things in time. Like we want to see not only reunification, but it be done, we find permanency quickly and we're not wasting time. So I think having a social worker probably definitely helped you. I'd like to hear more about that part, because the rest of us, we don't have that. Like, and I think it's a very good setup that the Office of Parental Representation has social workers. I wish we all had it, but you know, I think this is a message for county commissioners throughout the state, is that we need these types of people in our cases to help have good outcomes.
How common is it?
Not,
This is the only office in Texas.
Correct. There are some places that do have social workers or other multidisciplinary practices, but we are the only statutory-based OPR in the state, just like the office of, well, I guess they're now Travis County Child Representation is the only one like it in the state. And I think that you are absolutely correct that commissioners need to pay attention to this. We have data about our outcomes, and statewide in FY25, the reunification rate was 33%. Our office's reunification rate was 60%. We did not cure abuse and neglect. I don't know what we're doing differently other than having a multidisciplinary office that cares a whole lot and has integrity. I will let Sadia talk a little bit more about what she does, but the thing that I will say is that for those of you who know me, I can be a bit prickly. And so that was always a bit of a challenge sometimes, where I had to deliver hard news, because Nicole deserved to know the truth of her situation and what it would take. And Sadia came along and did a lot of picking up where my skill set is dead and done. So I'll let her talk about that.
There was a lot of tag teaming, which was really great. So she would have a really hard conversation with Jacqueline, and then she would call me, "This is what Jacqueline said." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but like you have to think of it big picture." So we did a lot of, breaking down stuff. And, Amber, before this case, came with a lot of trauma too. And so this just kept adding on, and like each month was like a new traumatic thing. And so we do for me as a social worker in general, as a profession, we very trauma-informed care perspective and person-centered perspective. So we whatever that day was the problem, that's where we started off with. I think a lot of it too was not a lot of people know how much mental health impacts their daily life. And so you have your kid taken away, you're super depressed about that. How are you supposed to do the bajillion things CPS is asking you to do? How are you supposed to go and get a job? How are you supposed to feed yourself, bathe yourself, do basic self-care? So that was more of the perspective I was coming into, like you have to take care of yourself to make it through this case, because if you don't, you're not gonna make it through. But Nicole is very open to feedback and just was welcoming any type of help. I know when she got her kid back and she called me, she's like, how do you stay awake? Because she was doing it by herself. And I was like, I don't know. Did you take energy drinks? Like what else can we do? And so we brainstormed a little about that. So it doesn't just stop at mental health. It's what it's like being a parent and being a single parent. Because during the case, I had to go on maternity leave on one of your big hearings, and I was like, I'm leaving her by herself. I'm abandoning her. But I think all of our work up until then prepared her to stand on her own. So when I came back 3 months later, Jacqueline was like, she's good. Let her fly. And I was like, okay. And then I didn't see her till like one of the last few hearings and then your mediation. And then I was like, okay, like my little girl grew up. She's good, she can fly.
So who funds your office?
The county.
So the county does that, so it is the commission. That's, yeah, okay. And does CPS, who's here for CPS, the department? Does the department have any social workers? I mean, I know you have caseworkers, and I imagine some of them have degrees in social work, just guessing.
Many of our caseworkers have degrees or even master's degrees in social work.
Right.
But they're not.
It's a different
this is an
thing,
Excellent,
for sure.
yes, they are not assigned to specifically and entirely be in support of a parent, right?
And I don't know that it would work. I think you really do have to have, that's wonderful. I know that y'all are very careful when you hire people to make sure that they have those credentials, which is certainly helpful. But it's a different dynamic in terms of wanting to have a separate entity for the parents, I would think. Yeah.
It is, because the way we set up is we don't have our social workers be in a position to testify. And so there's been one time with Zoe that I was like, ooh, I'm tempted, but it would just ruin our whole setup, right? And so we are also careful of both lawyer ethics and social worker ethics. And so if I have to have a conversation that I think is going to put a social worker in an awkward spot, I ask them to leave the room and the client and I have the conversation. We did this with Nicole. And then we invite the social worker back in once we've had that conversation and I know it can stay fully attorney-client privileged.
It sounds like you both were a really effective team to help Nicole through all of the phases of the case. I'm wondering, Nicole, what was your experience of that?
I'm thankful for them every day. I did a lot of work myself, but they did as well, so, yeah, it's, I was very, very fortunate to have both of these ladies on my side.
I'm going to circle back to the services. I counted therapy, parenting classes, numerous parenting classes. Working with the Safe Alliance. For those of you who are not from Austin, that's the Stop Abuse for Everyone organization. It's a local sexual assault resource center and domestic violence shelter. So therapy, parenting classes, Safe Alliance, and a parent coach. So you were juggling a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, how did you manage that? And also,
Determination. That's really it, determination, you know, I wanted to do everything that I could to help myself and to get my child back. I mean, that was the first thing and last thing on my mind.
I wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit more about your work with SAFE. Can you talk about how they supported you?
So, how did you work with what is it?
Probably her.
Oh, I think what started you interacting with SAFE is that it was your first, you had to do the classes, the DV classes, because there was concerns about DV. You met one of the teachers there. And then
From there,
that was your first attempt to leave, and then they couldn't take in your dog.
right,
And then you got assigned a court advocate. I think they either assigned you up by themselves or I did the referral form for you. It's so long, I don't remember. And then you were working with them for a while and you tried to leave again, and they were able to pay your deposit after you had left and was living with a friend.
I hadn't, obviously, had gotten a job. And I made friends with one of my coworkers, and thankfully enough, she, took me in for a month, and then I was able to find an apartment that I could afford. And SAFE helped me with all of that. They helped me find an apartment that was affordable. They paid my first month's rent and deposit. They helped with furniture, dishes, a camera, ring, like a Blink camera, so that I would feel safe. And then just like weekly talks, just talking as well,
Cause
That helped
between
as well.
your first and second attempts of leaving, I know me and the safe advocate that she had at the time had a lot of conversations with her. I would be driving in between like home visits and they would call me like, you have a quick time? I was like, yeah, let me just pull over. And we would talk about the benefits of leaving and what would that mean and what would we need to prepare and what would you need to emotionally prepare to do that.
I think the first time trying to leave, they were booked. I wouldn't,
What do you mean
I-
trying to leave?
when I was trying to leave, her father.
The-
That they wouldn't, help with the animals, that I had, and then they also, didn't have any room for me. It was months out. And then fortunately, I met the friend and was able to finally get out.
Was a CASA volunteer involved in this case?
The CASA volunteer was a giant barrier who ultimately got kicked off of the case. Anything you'd like to say?
That name will forever be in my brain. I wasn't emotional enough for her. I wasn't doing enough for her. I obviously didn't want my child back due to certain emotions, right?
She specifically said in a family group conference that she didn't think that Nicole cried enough, and so therefore did not miss her daughter and want her daughter back.
And so from there, we dealt with the supervisor. And even then, that was very not, we just did what we had to do with them.
Any CASA volunteer?
We did, but I refused to speak with them, to be honest. I just spoke with the supervisor and then that was like nearing the end of the case.
So the people involved in the court case, there was the CASA, there was also an attorney ad litem for the child. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
I saw her outside of court a total of maybe a minute in my home. And that was it. She didn't really speak to me. There was no questions asked. She showed up at my doorstep at 8:30 p.m., which was Riley's bedtime. And I didn't know that she was there. And so she filed that I refused to answer the door. When really I didn't know she was there. I was trying to put my baby to sleep. And then she came for a home visit, looked around for, like I said, a minute, and then didn't have anything to say and left, and that was it. She didn't try to get to know me as a person.
And that home visit was before our contested hearing to get unsupervised visit. So I was there, the attorney ad litem there was there, and the CASA supervisor.
So you weren't playing the role of attorney ad litem for the parent?
I'm Nicole's attorney
So you were playing the role of attorney ad litem for the parent? Okay,
for her.
that's what I was.
Yes. And so
Something fancier.
when a parent is willing to let this person into their home and have a conversation in advance of a contested hearing, and the attorney for the child doesn't take advantage of that opportunity, asks no questions, and doesn't stay the duration of the meeting to benefit from the answers that from the questions other people ask, that showed us that this lawyer doesn't actually care and is not going to do her job.
I actually saw her out, I would say almost a year ago. I was in a plaza, I think I was going to the dentist actually, and I saw her, and I waved to her and I said hello. And she didn't really say anything back, but I think it was good for her to see the fact that, you know, I'm here and you didn't stop me. I did what I needed to do for my child.
So doesn't Austin have an office for representatives of children, attorneys?
Yes.
So did this lawyer come from that group?
Yes.
So that's interesting because they're specifically trained in this area.
Yes. And I think that for me, there was a children's commission study in like 17 or 18 that surveyed both judges and the, caseworkers, attorneys for the department, all of that. And one of the questions was, when a lawyer doesn't meet their duties under the statute, are they held accountable by being removed from the list? And the judges said yes 86% of the time, and the attorneys for the department said yes 10% of the time. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from this, is having Nicole share her story to see that what the court is seeing on the bench is literally the tip of the iceberg, right? There's so much more happening that, honestly, in part because of fear of retaliation, we don't stand up in court and burn that lawyer, because that lawyer is gonna turn around and take it out on Nicole. And so we fight the battle that we can win. And that's making sure she's in a good spot to have contested hearings. I don't need that person's agreement. I just need to win over the judge. But this, I think the quality of representation issue highly impacts reunification, and is something that needs a lot more exposure.
I will say that this specific attorney, when I went up on the stand and she was asking me questions, she asked me a question that I couldn't answer. That was something her father needed to answer, and my answer to that question, she didn't like, and she rolled her eyes at me.
Oh, can you talk about the conservatorship workers from the department who you interacted with on your case?
There were only 3, right? There were only 3. The first one was short, a short time of knowing him, but he was nice, but I don't know that was the word for him. I think that, I don't know. He quit.
Yeah, he was fresh out of training and did not last probably 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was very short. And then I had another caseworker. Am I able to say?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I had another caseworker. His name was Johnny. He was there for a little while longer, but yeah, that was just a disaster. I don't really know how to explain it other than that. He signed me up for like the wrong classes. And so I ended up taking classes that weren't necessarily assigned to me, which was fine, you know, I enjoyed the classes. Yeah, how else would you?
The way I have him described in my notes is wholly incompetent and cruel.
Yeah,
He just didn't know what he was doing, and even trying to get him to make a referral to the right service was like herding cats.
or doing anything at all, really.
And I remember you telling me that when he was supervising visitation, he was always on his phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't really paying attention.
Did you have another caseworker after the second one?
Yes, Maureen Delaney. Maureen Delaney.
Tell me about Maureen.
I will never forget her. She advocated for me to have, instead of internal supervision, like in the facility, she allowed me to do visitation outside. So we did outside, we went to the Thinkery, we did the botanical garden. She advocated as well for me to be able to do longer visitations, multiple visitations, go to doctor's appointments, and be involved in my child's life a lot more than I was. So,
I think she made effort to also get to know you as a person
absolutely.
and not just judge Nicole based on that initial affidavit and what was on the page.
Dr. Nicole, is there anything else you want to say about any of the other people in the case that who Nicole interacted with?
Yeah, for sure.
So Riley's foster parent, she had one set of foster parents the entire time. I am still in contact with them to this day. We speak regularly. They still see Riley. They occasionally help me with her from time to time. If they want to see her, you know, I'm willing to have her go over there. So they still have a really great relationship. I feel that it would be unfair of me to not let them be in her life. They have been a huge support as well. They have helped me with a lot of things. And so I will be forever grateful for them as well.
Oh, was there ever a time that you were able to go with them to appointments for Riley?
Absolutely.
Can you talk some more about that, please?
Pretty much, no, every appointment after the hearing that we had, that allowed me to. I went to every single doctor's appointment, every specialist appointment, everything, you know, every appointment. I was able to be there with them.
So you went with the foster caregivers and Riley together.
Yes.
How did that facilitate your understanding of what Riley needed?
It gave me a better clarification on the care afterwards, her physical therapy, what all that entailed. Dental appointments, just basic doctor appointments, you know, what shot she needed, how she was developing, all of those different things.
I think it's really wonderful that the caregivers for your child and you were able to trust each other and communicate well enough so that you could attend the appointments and there was a lot of continuity for Riley. And I imagine as a mom that you felt like you knew that Riley was being well cared for.
Absolutely.
Do you have any advice based on that very positive experience with the caregivers for other parents and their interactions with people who are taking care of their children?
I don't really know how to answer that question. I just have this personality that I feel is very welcoming and they do as well. And so, it just made it really easy for me to have conversations and to talk to them about, and
what do you think the impact on Riley was to have so many adults who cared about her around her?
I think it was good. But I also think that at the same time, they're not her mom. You know, and so it was great to be able to be a part of that, and that they allowed me to be a part of that. Because there's certain boundaries, obviously, you know, so. It was,
So let me ask, the department tries to put children in this situation with other family members. And I take it that was not a possibility. And so that's the reason that your baby was put with the unrelated foster parents, right?
yes.
And so how did you end up, unlike a relative placement, which would be somewhat easy to have that kind of relationship, was that a struggle for you, or what kind of?
For me, no. They're amazing people, and it was easy to see when I met them for the first time. And so, no, because we just clicked really, and so it was just easy for me to talk to them and you know, just be around, I guess.
I think what also helped that sometimes foster parents, they get into this to adopt, they didn't like be standoffish because like, oh, we want to potentially adopt this child. They're very straightforward. I'm like, no, we're just gonna keep her until she can go back to you. I think that was also what made them very welcoming to Nicole.
Nicole, what was the transition like when Riley, between the foster caregivers and coming back to being with you? What was that like in your experience?
Are you meaning like after the reunification, or you mean like?
I'm curious about, so it sounds like you had a really positive relationship with caregivers and Riley stayed with them, and then eventually she came back to you, and I'm wondering, what that transition was like for you as a parent.
It was definitely hard at first, but they still helped me because obviously I worked full time and I don't have family here. And so they were more of like a family. They became that family to a certain extent. And so, you know, they were able to help me when I needed the help. They were a huge support after the return. And so I think because they wanted to see that for me, that their involvement just continued and still to this day. They didn't want to see me fail for sure.
We are starting to talk about the end of the case, and so I wanted to invite Jacqueline to talk a little bit about how she pivoted to a litigation forward approach. And Jacqueline, how you worked with Riley to prepare Nicole to testify at the hearing.
So we had to have a contested hearing to get Nicole unsupervised visitation. And then we had to have a contested hearing to do essentially a transition plan to overnights and getting to a return. And so it was shortly after the FGC where CASA made their comments that Nicole was able to leave her partner and establish her own place. And so we used that change to pivot into a heavier litigation where we were driving the bus, right? And so we met and talked about what we wanted and what the strategic plan would be. Filed a motion and set a hearing, and for us, that is usually 3 to 6 weeks out, depending on availability. And then I met with Nicole and Sadie 3 times to prep her to testify. And so we started out with like, just tell me your story. while I took a bunch of notes and then carefully turned that into role-playing direct examination. And then brought in another attorney from my office, Janet Vander Zanden, to role-play cross-examination as the attorney ad litem. And I find that to be extraordinarily helpful if you can have literally another human do that, because it's hard to be like, isn't it true? And then be like, I'm sorry, but I didn't, you know. So like if you do have that going on with your client, it's a little off-putting, but being able to bring somebody else in, and it's still luckily for us in our office and under that attorney-client privilege to role play that cross-examination. And that's something that Janet and I and another attorney, Cindy, who used to be in our office, used to do for each other all the time, and we're starting to do with our younger attorneys as well. And I think it's incredibly beneficial for the client to feel what that is like in that question format, and to just practice that. And so we met 3 different times, probably for an hour and a half to 2 hours, because at some point it's too much, right? And prepped her for that. So I think she was, even though I'm sure it was completely nerve-wracking, I think she was extremely well prepared. And if any of y'all have ever had your client up on the stand and they do really well, it's just like, yay! It's so exciting, right? But that was part of the case, was Nicole finding her voice. The way I would describe her in the beginning was the right choice for her was the one that someone else made. And then to see her completely grow into her voice and be able to stand up for herself and advocate for herself and advocate for her daughter and speak truth to power was amazing. And so I think her therapy and her EMDR had a lot to do with that. But I think role playing that as well, and us knowing the judges, knowing what they want to see, and us going out and producing that good evidence so that we had that to show. And part of that was getting a parent coach assigned, which I know not every place has, but that's someone that would go to Nicole's visits and interact with her and her child there in the moment and provide feedback or redirection, or hey, when they're having a meltdown, why don't you try this instead? And that is a person that can come and testify to the court about how good of a parent Nicole is and how there are no safety concerns.
Jacqueline, I have a question.
Yes.
So you said it was about 3 to 6 weeks before you were able to have your hearing.
Yes.
And I'm not gonna lie, my heart is sitting here and I'm having palpitations hearing about cross-examinations and doing all this and that. Was there any collaboration in between that time period where the attorneys from each side kind of sat down, tried to work some things out, maybe ask if you all could go to mediation as opposed to having to go through all this litigation? Because I know for a fact it's very traumatic to have to relive this and be grilled about this. And, you know, sometimes mediation is a better way to resolve this. So I'm just wondering if at any point of time in those 3 to 6 weeks, did you all discuss that?
Yeah, so we had discussed at the FGC that we wanted unsupervised visits, and at that time, none of the child advocates were supportive of that. And the ultimate barrier was the attorney ad litem, who took the position of, unless someone can tell me how these injuries happened, I can't agree to anything. And so we don't tend to use mediation in that way in Travis County, but the lawyers can discuss and have cool bag conversations in the hallway. And so with the attorney ad litem taking that stance of, unless you have a crystal ball, I'm not helping, then there was no negotiation to have. Because we could have had some heartfelt meeting or mediation, and Nicole could have poured her heart out, re-traumatizing herself, and that attorney still would have said no.
So all the other attorneys could have come to an agreement on something.
The only other attorney would have been the department's attorney. We did, after I filed a motion, like a week or so before our hearing, come on board.
Can you give us the general timeline? I mean, we're kind of getting it in pieces, so.
Sure. So we did, I think the case was filed in April of 23. And it was March of 24 where we had our contested hearing for unsupervised visits. We also got an extension at that time. And then I want to say it was probably around May where we went back and got the overnights and the return.
So was this done as a transitional monitored return? Or?
It was not, but it was written out very similar, but we didn't want to shortchange the deadline of the return by doing the transitional return monitor.
So you were in an extension when,
Yes,
okay.
yes, we were 3 months into an extension.
So this is not in the original 12 months. This is,
No.
Okay.
No. And I honestly think that the domestic violence played a part in that. The statistic is it takes 7 times to try to leave a domestic violence relationship. So the time that it took for that, and then also from my perspective, the efforts at cooperation slowed us down.
so at what point was there the new caseworker assigned? Because it sounded like Nicole had a very collaborative approach, or at least a good relationship with that last caseworker. So like where in the process did that caseworker get assigned, if you remember?
December, January, so probably December of 23 or January of 24, so that would have been 9 to 10 months into the case.
So everything starts moving a little bit faster once that caseworker's in the
Sure did.
case.
We also got a new ADA at that time. What's the ADA? The assistant district attorney that represented the department.
I have one quick question before we talk about what happened after the case ended, which is, can you talk a little bit about the father's involvement in the case and how the folks involved in the case interacted with that?
I don't know much about that, to be honest with you.
Anytime we had a family group conference or a permanency conference, all the questions were directed at Nicole because she was the mom. And he did not make any effort, in my opinion, to proactively answer questions and be the parent that was going to be held accountable. And the system was just very happy to just get along and question Nicole and let him sit there.
So Nicole and the father were living together when the removal happened. And then it took several really challenging on your part moves
Yeah.
to finally get out of there is what
Yes.
happened. So okay.
Part of that too is that Nicole didn't have a job. She was the stay-at-home mom and he was the provider. So it took her a while to get a job to save funds to even have funds to leave and to form other human connections with people so they could let her stay with them so she could leave.
Because unfortunately, as we mentioned before, the shelters didn't have her.
So I hate to interrupt this, and this is wonderful. Because Justice Hawkins only learned of his new assignment here 2 days ago, he has to leave, but not out of disrespect. He is very interested in this, as we all are. I mean, we have a lot of judges at this table. This is very helpful. Did you have any questions, Justice?
No, I just want to say, Nicole and Jacqueline and Sarai, thank you for being here this morning. Admire your courage, and I appreciate you sharing your experience with us today. I'm glad I've had the chance to meet you, and I'm sorry to be leaving early due to these scheduling conflicts, but I look forward to being at the next meeting and continuing to work with you.
Thank you, Justice.
Thank you.
And we'll give you the schedule.
Thank you. Yeah, right. That'll help.
It always helps if you have the schedule.
I
So
have,
please go ahead.
let's talk about what happened after the case ended in court. Nicole, what support did you receive after family reunification?
I did not receive anything. Riley had CCS, CMS, I don't know what it's called.
CCS, the daycare,
CCS.
yeah.
She had that for a year, and then she also had insurance for a year. But everything for me ended after the case. And I would say, for me, I could still continue my therapy and the things that I needed to for my health, for my mental health. But that's one thing I would like to bring up is that parents still need help as well as the child. If reunification, you know, is the thing, I would say that continuing the care for the mother or the father or whoever the parent is just as beneficial to the child as giving the child what they need as well.
What kind of support would have been beneficial to you?
I would say just ongoing therapy, maybe continuing the parent coach, as we live our, you know, our daily lives. Learning how to navigate through life. I would really just say everything that could be continued. Classes ended, but like the therapy, the EMDR, the parent coach, the safe advocate, all of that stuff just ended after we won the case, really.
Can you tell me about your housing situation?
Right now?
Yes.
Yes, I bought a house recently in July. We're doing great.
Before we open things up to the audience for questions in the time we have remaining, I have two big picture questions for each of our panelists. The first one is, knowing what you know now, what, if anything, would you have done differently on this case? Is that question?
Yeah. I don't know, that's really hard. I think I would do, I don't know, I mean, I feel like I did everything that I could, and I think that if it put me in the same position that I am now, I would do it all over again. Honestly. Very grateful.
I don't know, so I jumped on your case maybe a few months or so after we got it. I think just for the future of our office, I would like for there to be a social worker on every case. I know that's not really possible right now, but that can change. Yeah, give us your money. But I think just like in Nicole's case, like we were very beneficial to have a social worker on it, not to like toot my own horn, but there was that collaboration with attorneys and social workers, because we both think with very different minds, where attorneys are a little straightforward, sometimes a little prickly, and social workers come in who can use different perspective to get the big point across, but also do all the touchy feely stuff. And it helps out. The burden is really heavy to carry for just one person, so just to be that professional to help distribute that weight, I would focus more on that to see how else I could be emotionally available.
You left me out of it, so.
I think that the timing of Nicole's case, it was a little bit slower than I would have liked. But I don't think that rushing her into something she wasn't ready for is a good idea, for her in particular. Like, I was already pushing her a lot, right? And I didn't want to push her to the point that she broke, right? And I'm no pusher. So I think that the timing could have been faster, but
How long was the child out of the home?
from April of 23 to May of 24, so 13 months.
So not long past the year.
Right. Correct. I think I also learned a lot from Nicole about representing parents and about how I want to train my attorneys. And so her original attorney from our office, the advice was to euthanize your dog, and that was stupid. And the dog didn't do it. So that attorney left and I took over Amber's case, and when I met with her, we're still pre-contested adversary hearing, and I know we do weird stuff in Travis County, but like, she's maybe like 3 or 4 weeks into her case at that point, and I'm like, the lawyer said what? And so since that time, just the way that I, not in like porn tuning place that we're living right now, the way I run my office and the way I train my attorneys and paralegals, social workers, our office manager is very like compassion forward, meet the client where they're at, even though I'm prickly. These are also tissues for me because it's gonna happen. But like, we care so deeply about our clients, and I don't always see that everywhere. To the extent of like, she was newly out of her relationship and had a flat tire the day she was supposed to have a visit, and I was like, absolutely not. I grew up in my dad's garage, on my way, right? And
You
because
didn't put it in the calendar, by the way.
I did not, and
On record.
I confessed to my social worker on the way home about, about boundaries that I always preach. Here's what I just did. But like, that's the kind of thing that makes somebody call their partner they just left and go back into a relationship. And if we weren't being broadcast, I would choose different words, but absolutely not, that was not happening when I have the power to fix that. And we don't always have the power to do stuff like that.
So, and the reason I asked a minute ago about whether or not you were the attorney ad litem is because I was a trial judge presiding over these kind of cases for many years in Tarrant County, and we don't have any office like that. So we appoint, but we have good representation because we know who the lawyers are and we appoint good lawyers. So what percentage of the cases in Travis County come from your office?
That's an excellent question. We're still trying to answer with the county's data, but if I had to guess right now, I'd say about 40% we handle. And that's, the primary parent that we get appointed to. And then of course there are private attorney appointments for the.
And the others are doing it like, I guess a lot of us do, or did.
Yes. Yes, with the private appointment wheel. And so I think I agree with Sunny about having more social workers. They make a huge difference. One of my dreams for our office is to also have parent advocates that are parents with lived experience who can, as much as, there's my experience and Sunny's got a different skill set, a parent with lived experience on our team, protected by attorney-client privilege, paid a good wage from the county to then be able to partner with someone like Nicole and be that support, having lived through it themselves. So yeah, we have big dreams for our office.
My last question is, what advice do you have for judges, attorneys, and policymakers for how to better encourage family reunification for more children and families?
When you see something, say something. I think we can all right now in our brain think of that one lawyer that we're like, oof, right? You see when things are going wrong in your courtroom, and I think speaking up on that in a way is probably a challenge, right? I don't know what it's like to be a judge, but weighing in on stuff like that, I think can be hard. But when you see injustice being done and a parent or a child for that matter, not being represented well because of their court-appointed attorney, you don't need to call them out in open court, right? But making sure that somebody is getting a fair shot, even if the appointment we'll spend maybe didn't help them as much as you would have liked it to. I think that if we got rid of all the lawyers who are questionable, the system would crash. I very much know that. But I think that we've got to do a better job at policing ourselves, and holding people accountable, lawyer to lawyer and judge to lawyer. And that's really hard. I did it Tuesday and I'm paying the consequences of it, but you gotta call it out.
I think what helps parents in this position is that everyone making the decisions gets to know the parent. Like, I think people have preconceived notions based on what they're reading or they've heard from other people, but they don't get that information directly from the parent. I think if there's any policies to help promote that, which is like, you know, in the haystack, I don't think that'll ever happen, but if people are willing to try, I think it would have a really big impact on our clients and this population. Cause I think they're deeply underserved, and I think it's the population that needs the most help.
I think if I had anything to say, I would say I feel as though there should have been some type of extensive investigation in my case. Because if that was the case, all the questions would have been answered. And I don't feel as though there was really much of that. I mean, after the hospital, it was pretty much done with the police department. So I don't know how far things can go, but I just wish there was a little bit more of not all eyes on me, and it would have been equal.
And one thing I alluded to in the beginning that I just want to talk a little bit more about, like missing from Nicole's case is addiction. And we see that in a lot of CPS cases. Missing from her case is debilitating mental health issues. We're missing that. And Amber's right. And our Black and brown clients are not always treated or frequently treated any better than her situation. And that we see cases that are similar facts and how implicit bias impacts somebody's ability to get a reunification. And so as much as this case was extremely hard, you know, she is the outlier, right? She's now a homeowner. She got an excellent job during the case. No addiction and debilitating mental health issues in the case. She is the outlier, right? And it was still, you see how hard it was for her. So just keep that in mind as well.
Is there time for any other questions?
There's definitely time. This is wonderful. I'm sure these judges have a ton of questions from others. No, am I wrong?
I'll just echo what you all have been saying about the importance of social workers in the courtroom. When I took the bench in 2019, when I took the bench in 2019, I saw parents leaving the court, and then when they came back to court, they still hadn't done the services, they hadn't contacted the people they needed to talk to. And honestly, the attorneys are overwhelmed, caseworkers are overwhelmed. So no one was really holding their hand, and I hate that's for lack of a better term. I'm not saying someone needs to hold your hand. But I said something's gotta give. And so I was blessed enough to be able to connect with the Alliance, and they were able to get someone in my courtroom who was a social worker and also a case navigator. And she made a world of difference.
Yeah.
Now, my county didn't fund her position. And so it's no longer, she's no longer there. But that time frame that she was there through that grant with the Alliance and the coaching, it made a world of difference. I mean, in that short period of time, we saw parents being more interactive in court, feeling like they had a voice outside of, they felt like everyone else was a part of the system, but that person was not hired through CPS, and the court didn't appoint that person. And so, she was a social worker. And so she knew how to navigate this system in a way that was trauma informed and responsive, and made the parents feel comfortable and the children feel comfortable. And there was a lot of collaboration, a lot. The attorneys would sit down with her. So that's why I'm really big on the collaboration part of it. I know there are some instances where, the children can't go home right away, or we're not in a position to really sit down and negotiate. But there were some times when cases were resolving in record time. And these families are still together, they're still intact. So I believe in the power of social workers, and we need to toot that horn. And whatever we need to do to get social workers in the courtrooms, we definitely need them there.
So is the social worker on your staff, Judge?
She was not on my staff. She was through the county, but she was funded through the foundation at the Felton.
And so other judges could use this person too?
If they needed to, they could.
Hi, I want to say thank you for being here. I also want to continue to enthusiastically advocate for social workers. I think it's really important. But big picture, I want to point out to my colleagues a few things here. I work a lot with young people who are in foster care, and I'm hearing a lot of similar themes regarding distrust, authentic engagement. And really, I think what people need to hear is that when people are face to face with the system, either being somebody that has their children removed or somebody that's been removed themselves, there's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of fear. And you could hear this, quite frankly, with the conversation that's been going on. From the very beginning, from the safety plan not being honored, which was supposed to be a collaborative development, these types of things kind of set people up for an adversarial and distrustful relationship with that exists. And if this relationship remains in this state, it's no surprise as to why we see so many people, get separated long-term and children placed in long-term foster care, things like that. Now, I think what's really important, and this is what I want to recognize, is that everybody, especially parents and kids that are removed, they want to be validated in their experience. And I think that your attorney and your social worker did an excellent job of doing that. I think that just being able to explain this really confusing time, being able to tell you what is to come, what expectations to have, and being able to guide you through that and connect you with people that can do that through your parent coach, your advocate, and even your first therapist, right? It was kind of described as no, but I know from working as somebody that lived in foster care, and I also know from working with young people in foster care, that you have to get people into the right mindset for therapy to even work. And so when we look at, I'm a big advocate for therapy, big advocate for mental health, but it would be wrong to throw somebody immediately into something intense like EMDR without first establishing a good relationship.
Sure.
And so the point I want to make to my colleagues in the room is that this type of establishing a sense of trust by demonstrating authentic engagement and treatment is really something that proves to be transformational, because we cannot expect to do good work with people if the people that we're working with don't trust us. So shout out to the social workers, shout out to you, and I just want to say that the authenticity and the relational support, as well as the instrumental support you received, and your own persistence and perseverance is why you're here today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment or two. Nicole, I'm a founding member of the Collaborative Council, so I've been to a lot of these meetings, and you touched my heart. I'm about to cry. The authenticity of your story. But this happens all the time. This is not uncommon. This is very common. I ran a residential treatment center for 20 years. I've helped lead some large child placing adoption agencies. I've been to hundreds of hearings around the state of Texas, and this is not uncommon. My mentors in this work were Bruce Perry, Karen Purvis, and dare I say it, Scott McCown. And Scott McCown, we were having lunch one day, and he said, Mike, if you're really, really lucky, you get a good CPS investigator. If you're a little more lucky, you get a good CPS worker. If you're super lucky, you get a good ad litem attorney and an educated judge. And this was 20 years ago that we had this conversation. He said, how do we take the luck out of our system? How do we make it that you don't get lucky to get your needs met, that the system actually provides that? And too often we give people like Nicole and children what we have, not what we need. They need. We don't do an upfront assessment or early intervention and say, this is what you need. Instead, we follow, and let me say one thing, I've been involved in the legislative process for a long, long time, and policy and implementation are two different things. And we have great policy, but it fails at the implementation level. And your story is so moving, and you said it was determination, and that's what it is. Just too many people give up. The other thing, Karen Purvis taught me that treatment and healing were two different things. And we should stop treating people and we should start healing people. And that should be our guiding objective. Because treatment is just going through the motions many times and saying, checking the boxes. You got to go through parenting training, you got to go through therapy, whether it was effective or not. And so I hope that your story and courage, Nicole, really grows and people hear that. And as you said, in rural areas, that whole dearth of services, and we have so much to improve on. You pointed that out to us, and your courage and determination. Bruce Perry said that you're only going to succeed unless we put a tribe around you. And that's what you have, is a tribe. And that's people who believe in you and who trust you, like Tim said. And so again, I hope this really sparks a big conversation and lets us know one more time how much work we have to do. The commission is great. The key is in educating people and getting people the skill set and the knowledge they need to serve our kids and our families. So thank you.
I wanted to ask about the investigation. You said you felt it was more thorough. Were you and the father both alleged perpetrators for physical abuse or failure to protect? What was the determination?
They were unable to determine.
And it was related to physical abuse.
They were, yeah.
And your experience in the hospital, you felt that you weren't treated very well. Did you have any legal assistance or advocates? And was there a second medical opinion on what was going on?
I had nothing. No. There was nothing.
Yes.
I have a question for Jacqueline. I'm also from a rural community, and so I'm accustomed to the dearth of resources and accustomed to talking to commissioners. I know that Travis County has significantly more resources. However, would you mind sharing with our colleagues how it is that having a social worker helps you to better leverage the financial resources that are available to your office?
Yeah, I think you see, in my mind, I think that decision makers who get to decide where the money goes, and a lot of times it's county commissioners, right? They care about what's on a spreadsheet, and this doesn't go on a spreadsheet, right? So it's very hard to translate this into something a county commissioner or whoever would care about, right? But I think you see the impact of somebody working with Nicole through what was able to be accomplished, right? And the way I think that translates into commissioners in a lot of ways is through outcomes, right? And I know that the department focuses a lot on permanency, and I personally hate that word. Because if we're achieving permanency by terminating parents' rights in 8 months and hoping some nice family will come along and adopt them, that is not a positive outcome, probably most of the time, potentially, right? So I think that we're working on showing how social workers make an impact, highlighting the work that they do, translating that into outcomes. So I shared this statistic that in FY '25, we had a 60% rate of reunification compared to the statewide rate of 33%. That does fit in a spreadsheet, and I think that matters, and I think that's because of social workers, because we have seen the change since we hired Sunny in April or May of '23, April. And then we have 2 more social workers, right? And so our outcomes continue to improve as we have added more social workers to our office, and honestly, as we have trained our attorneys a little bit differently on how to do this work. So I think tying what a social worker can do to a tangible outcome is probably what matters and what speaks the loudest.
And I'm gonna take that a step further for our rural communities. You're paying an attorney rates to do social work. And really truthfully, we could make our dollars go a lot farther if we had social workers who could do some of these things, and you wouldn't be paying attorney rates to do it. Because as it is right now, I as counsel am doing a lot of what the social worker would do, but you're paying me at an attorney rate, and that's not the most efficient use of our funding and our resources.
It's a very low attorney rate, I must say.
Amen.
And speaking for me, I'm not good at being a social worker, right? When she talked about our grades are very, very different, right? It's wild sometimes as we talk about things, and see how that is different. But you're paying the attorneys the attorney rate of social work, and some of them are not good at it.
There's someone over there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming and telling this story today. I have 2 questions for you. One, it was never clear to me, were you able in the process of seeking domestic violence shelter at some point to keep your pets? And then a question for your attorney, what advice would you have for people like my boss, who's a legislator? Was there anything in this case that you think the legislature needs to step in and fix that is a statutory issue, not a policy issue?
So I can answer the first question. No, there wasn't anything for the pets. I think they suggested me putting them in a shelter or boarding system. And I ended up just leaving my pets there, until I got home, and then I was able to go and get my pets.
Somebody talked about policy versus implementation. There's a lot of laws that, from my experience, are designed to make sure the system functions well, like having a family plan of service, having it filed, filing a written visitation plan, and changing that and filing it every time the rules change. That's not done. So making a different or new law, it's like the old Seinfeld bit, right? Like anybody can take a reservation, it's holding that matters. If the laws aren't enforced, they're meaningless. And so I think that's in part on how do lawyers do that in a way that matters. A $50, $100 fine with an apartment doesn't help Nicole get what she needs. So I don't have a good answer, but I'll get your information and think about it and let you know.
Thank you so much.
I'm really glad that you asked that question. It's one of the first things I wrote down on my notes today. When Jacqueline was talking about county commissioners, we've heard about them for a long time. I think Texas is probably the richest state in the history of the United States. We've got a lot of money in the bank. My district has one of the 5 poorest counties in the state. You would be shocked to see the total budget for this county. We struggle to pay court-appointed attorneys. One of my counties, Border County, would have been completely bankrupted during the border crisis if it had not been funded with the state grant. I think it's time for Texas to realize that the state of Texas needs to pay for attorney ad litem for parents and children, and not require counties to do that in an unfunded mandate. Our counties are struggling, and we have a lot of money in the state coffer that could, I believe, very easily solve this problem. That's my 2 cents.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, and let me know if you want some help and examples and mouthiness on that, but I would also add, we have a member of the community and her friends right now who, out of the kindness of their heart, fundraise and bring us Walmart gift cards. And we don't have any sort of nonprofit status. They get no tax deduction for doing it. It's just a bunch of chill old ladies who support the work that we do. And so when we have, Nicole struggled with having food and food stamps and navigating that system. Now, if she were our client, we could hand her a Walmart gift card and be like, here, go get some groceries, right? And I think we're down to like 2 or 3 gift cards right now. So like, it's not always there, but when it is, you get your kids back and it's been 14 months and they're in completely different sizes and oops, CPS lost their belongings, right? And so like having funding to also fill the gaps helps a whole lot too.
I want to echo that. When I was appointing lawyers, when I was not teasing when I said a very low rate, I mean, it was cents on the dollar is what I could pay these people. And you're just, what are you gonna get with that? I mean, you get a few really good people because those few people are passionate about it and they're gonna do it, no matter what. They're not doing it for the money. But most lawyers, are lawyers because they're good people. They want to be a service, absolutely. But they also need to make a living for their family. And so, if we could have public defender type offices for this, that's what we need, yes.
I just want to point out to my colleagues that this Office of Parent Representation is practicing active efforts. They have gotten the social worker to hold the parent's hand and get her into the services. I'm sure they work with her schedule, jobs, that sort of thing, found the right class at the right time. That is what active efforts are. So I think some people are kind of confused what that is. So I want to point out, you just heard a presentation on active efforts and how that helps the parent get through the services that they need to get their child back. And that is a legislative fix that we could look at. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here. We really, all of us appreciate it very, very much. It was very insightful. I think that all of us probably have a list that's probably pretty similar about things that we think need to happen. I think all of us probably got the idea about social work, the necessity of that. I'm thinking I'm not the only one that caught that. And just your willingness and courage to be here today. You've been through a lot, we know you have, and it took a lot to be here. And we really do appreciate you being willing to do it, to help others, because that's why you did it, and we all appreciate it.
I always said that if there was anything that I could do for someone that was in the position like me, I would do it. And so that's why I'm here today.
Thank you very much. Is what I could pay these people. And you're just, what are you gonna get? I mean, you get a few really good people because those few people are passionate about it and they're gonna do it, no matter what. They're not doing it for the money. Lawyers, are lawyers because they're good people. They want to be a service, absolutely, but they also need to make a living. That wasn't me. Okay, so now after that very, very meaningful presentation, we're going to go back to our agenda so that we can just kind of pick up where we left off. So, I know everybody's probably hungry now after all that. And so we're gonna try to break for lunch at about noon. This is being recorded, so, and streamlined, so just please refrain from shuffling around too much. I guess it's kind of too late to say that, obviously, but, Fill out your match forms, which are printed and placed on the resource table. So the Federal Court Improvement Program grant requires us to submit this, so please be sure and do that. Remember that there are allowable travel expenses, including parking fees, which can be reimbursed by the commission. And there are printed reimbursement forms available if you can access those forms. If the collaborative council members want to speak towards the end of the meeting, please fill out a speaker card. Some of you or I'm not sure exactly who was a member of the collaborative council today, but if you want to do that, please do that. So if you all could please look behind tab 1 in the meeting notebook. This document includes the commission, the committee, the collaborative council members, as well as staff. And we do have a few changes that I want to highlight today. For commissioners, there's a copy of your bio at your seats. This is what is currently shared on the website. So if you'd like to ensure that it's up to date, please do so. I'm sure that many of you want to do that. I know I saw mine and I said, oh my goodness, we need to change this. So be sure that you look at those. In November, we had the opportunity to welcome 3 of our 5 new commissioners, and 2 of them were unable to be here, but they are here those 2 are here today. And so I would like to introduce you. Number 1 is Dr. Julie Kaplow. And so she is the Executive Vice President of the Trauma and Grief Programs and Policy at the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, and the Executive Director of the Trauma and Grief Center at the Hackett Center for Mental Health. We are so honored to have you and for you to bring your expertise. And could you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Well, it's a true honor to be here. I'm Julie Kaplow. I'm a clinical psychologist, and as you just heard, I wear a couple of different hats at the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, leading our trauma and grief programs and policy, and also directing our Trauma and Grief Center. At the Trauma and Grief Center, we really have 4 different pillars where we focus on developing evidence-based interventions for kids who've experienced any form of trauma or the death of a loved one or loss of a loved one. We also disseminate those interventions through large-scale trainings of community and school-based clinicians, as well as really anyone who is serving children who've experienced trauma and loss. We also do research looking at the long-term impact of trauma and loss on children, as well as the effectiveness of different interventions in different settings. And then we work on policies related to ensuring that any child who experiences trauma and loss receives best practice care wherever they are. And so again, just thrilled to be part of this committee.
Welcome. We're so glad to have you. And we also have a wonderful judge who's joining us, the Honorable Ian Speckler. There we go. I thought you looked new. I'm so glad to see you here. And he's got a unique experience for us. He's an administrative law judge with the State Office of Administrative Hearings. He has extensive knowledge of matters relating to special education of children in foster care and serves as the chair of the Commission's Foster Care and Education Committee. And so that's really a unique perspective for us. And I'm so glad to welcome you. So could you please introduce yourself to us?
You did such a great job. But yes, I've been lucky enough to work with the commission on various committees that whatever Jamie tolerates for me for probably about 13 or 14 years now. And I've been a judge for 8 years, primarily seeing special education lawsuits, although I do a smattering of other cases. Before that, I was at Disability Rights Texas for 10 years, appearing in foster care courts across the state. Was lucky enough to practice in front of my friend Judge Hoffman and my other friend Judge Stuckey. Those are my 2 friends. And had a lot of kids in Mike Foster's homes, so it was good to hear from you, Mike. But yeah, so I did that for 10 years and then came over and started doing special education cases. And so I'll do whatever I can to help the commission and help the children of Texas.
Thank you so much. And welcome. Another change to the commission membership is the departure of CPS Associate Commissioner Erica Benuelos. After many years of dedicated service, she's going to take on a new role for special projects at DFPS. And we are grateful for the many years of dedicated service that she's provided to us and provided to the state generally in so many capacities. She oversaw several key initiatives at the agency, and she always worked relentlessly to reduce the number of children and champion kinship care, and we all could see that. And we wish you the very best.
Thank you so much.
Would you like to have some departing remarks?
Absolutely. So I've been with DFPS for 29 years and have worked just about every stage of service and position that you can think of. And coming up to Austin was something that I really wanted to experience. I wanted to be a part of creating different processes, working with the legislature to see how that all goes down to the field and how it impacts the families. And so for the last 6 years, that's the work that I've been allowed to do. And I've been very blessed to have some great leaders and just the overall collaboration that I've been able to do while I've been at the state office has just been so amazing, and everyone has been so kind and so receptive that it is time that I go back to San Antonio. I commute every day. I've been doing that for 6 years. I know, that's what Commissioner would always say. That was a 2-hour, like a 4-hour drive every day and 200 miles. But I truly am so dedicated to the children and families that we serve. I wouldn't have had it any other way. But it is time for me to go back and be much closer to my home and be able to spend more time with my family. So thank you for always having me and for supporting us at CPS, and my dedication will never end. I'll just be in a different role, but still championing the work.
Thank you very much. We truly. So I also want to recognize that Sarah Crockett is no longer at Texas-CASA. She's rolled off the Systems Improvement Committee and Collaborative Council, and we wish her the best in her new role at HHSC, and we're grateful for her many years of leadership and service. Judge Carlos Villalone stepped down from the Data Committee, and Judge David Barkley will now serve on the committee. Is Judge Barkley here? No. Judge Barkley presides over the 8th Region South Child Protection Court in North Texas, and we look forward to working with him. And Tiffany Greco stepped into a new role at the Texas Alliance of Child and Family Services and will no longer serve on our training committee. We wish her well, and we welcome her colleague, Andre Requinas, who is the new Vice President of Learning at the Alliance. So let's all give these people a round of applause. So we have Denise Smith. Yes, Denise Smith. She joins the Collaborative Council on behalf of Grandparents Raising Grandchildren, a nonprofit in the San Antonio area. Ms. Smith brings many years of experience as a kinship caregiver, and we welcome you. We appreciate your partnership. We appreciate your service, and we want to welcome you aboard. Would you like to say a few words?
I'm very honored to be here and listening to the story on a personal level from Nicole. Does bring back some memories, but my goal to be here is to provide awareness and hopefully change moving down. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm also very excited to share that we now have a juvenile justice staff attorney. Yes, 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 we needed that. This is a new position that's funded by the 89th legislature to provide training and support to judges hearing these types of cases. As all the judges in this room know, as I certainly saw, there's a lot of overlap there. And so we really are very appreciative. This is very, very important. And so you're here for our first commission meeting. We welcome you, and please introduce yourself to us.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and I am so happy to be here with everyone this morning. Just a little bit of background about me. I was a prosecutor. I worked in 3 different counties for about 13 years total. I spent 7 of those years as the juvenile prosecutor in Caldwell County. And there I really developed a love for the juvenile justice field. And I wanted to continue that work. And so December 15th of 2025, I joined the Children's Commission. And I am very happy to have done that and to be here with everyone. I'll update y'all a little bit later on my work since I started. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So just a little housekeeping here. We need to get approval of our minutes. So those minutes from the November 14th meeting were distributed. They're behind tab 2 in your notebook. So if everyone has had an opportunity to review these, I hope. And so are there any corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the minutes from this November meeting?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The minutes are adopted. Thank you. Okay, now then. Okay, so now we're going to have a staff report from the commission. Please reference the report behind tab 3. And this does include comprehensive details on each of the projects that we're currently handling. The presentation today is going to focus on several highlights since we last met in November. And the financial report, which we're always interested in, is included behind tab 4. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful and irreplaceable Jamie Bernstein.
Thank you for that generous introduction. Hi, everyone. Those who don't know me, I'm Jamie Bernstein. I'm the director of the Children's Commission. I'll be brief because I want to yield the time to our amazing team to share some great work that we have recently got to the finish line, some reports that we're excited to tell you about. I'm just going to mention couple things quickly. First, at your seats, hopefully we have enough printouts for everyone of our annual report from last year. I would say the highlight, there were many great things that happened last year, but the highlight for us was getting out to the regions and doing Texas Family First reasonable efforts trainings in partnership with the department. We learned a lot from the various regions of the state. They were multidisciplinary groups. We had lawyers, social workers, CASAs, SSCCs, and we're really trying to bolster those reasonable efforts discussions in the courtroom, and it was very uplifting. I also want to mention that earlier this week, for the first time in 6 years, we were able to visit with our colleagues who do what we do in other states. The Court Improvement Program, of course, is a grant that's available in all states through their highest court. And we hosted an ACF Region 6 meeting that included Arkansas, Louisiana, and New Mexico. It was very energizing and inspiring to hear from one another about some of our projects and our areas of focus. And we came back with a lot of really great ideas, and I think they did too. So looking forward to continuing to do that moving forward. But with that, I will turn it over to Brenda and Elizabeth on systems improvement.
Good morning, everybody. We're going to start with the caregiver roundtable. On November 17th, 2025, the Children's Commission, in partnership with DFCS, convened a statewide caregiver notice roundtable to examine how Texas provides notice and engagement to caregivers in child welfare court hearings. The discussion and recommendations are reflected in the February 2026 Caregiver Notice Roundtable Report, which many of the commissioners should have already in your packet of information. There should be extra copies at the resource table, and it is currently available online on the Children's Commission's website. The purpose of the roundtable is pretty straightforward, and it was to ask central questions of do caregivers consistently receive notice of court hearings, and do caregivers have a meaningful opportunity to be heard at court hearings? So why does this even matter? Under Texas Family Code, section 263.0021, caregivers must receive at least 10 days notice of chapter 263 hearings. They must be told that their attendance is optional, and they must be allowed to provide information about the child. Federal law 42 USC section 675(5)G contains parallel requirements and makes clear caregivers do not need to be parties to have the right to be heard. However, during round 4 of the Child and Family Services Review, commonly known as the CFSR, and you'll hear that CFSR discussed in other presentations, Texas was found not to be routinely providing notice to caregivers or tracking whether notice occurred. The roundtable was then our first substantive step towards addressing that finding. So what did we hear from our caregivers? We had 6 caregivers, both licensed foster parents and kinship caregivers from rural and urban counties participating directly. And through them, several themes emerged. The first theme was inconsistency, where some caregivers receive notice of the hearing, others do not. Some caregivers noted that they received notice on the wrong case. There was also a communication component where sometimes hearings would get reset and caregivers were never told that the hearing was reset. Another thing was timeliness, and basically caregivers did not have enough time to take off work, secure childcare, and prepare the child emotionally because of the time frame in which they were notified of the hearing. There was a lack of clarity in that many caregivers did not know they had a right to be heard, what they were permitted to share, or whether they would even be sworn in. There were also some themes regarding privacy and safety concerns, particularly in the virtual hearings. Caregivers reported some discomfort about being identified on Zoom or in open court. There were also some training gaps identified where foster parents training often does not address court participation, and caseworkers are not always familiar with their statutory requirements. So what stood out most was this: caregivers want to participate, but they need clarity, safety, and predictability. So what are some of the benefits of caregiver engagement that we learned from doing the roundtable? The participants consistently emphasized that caregivers have the most current information about the child. They see the child daily, they observe progress and setbacks, they're able to identify some unmet needs, and they provide continuity when professionals change throughout the case. Engagement of the caregivers supports better informed judicial decisions, greater placement stability, faster identification of service gaps, improved time to permanency, and stronger collaboration between parents and the caregivers. Caregivers themselves also describe something more intangible but equally important. When they are included, they felt valued, and that supports retention of those caregivers. So what are some of the current system challenges that the roundtable identified? Well, one of the things is the primary responsibility lies with DFPS or the SSEC caseworkers, which is single source continuum contractors, but heavy caseloads and turnover oftentimes complicate that compliance. Another system issue was that Impact, which is a primary mandatory automated case management system for DFPS, doesn't automate the notices. And another one was that the caregiver information may be outdated. E-filing systems they notify attorneys, but those e-filing systems don't notify caregivers. And then also the notices that are sent out often omit the required language, informing the caregivers of their opportunity to be heard. There was also that some courts lack time-certain dockets, so that required caregivers to log in early and wait for hours. There's also no uniform method for courts to confirm whether or not a caregiver was present. And then the courts vary in how caregivers are identified and allowed to participate in the hearing. At the core, the issue was not a lack of authority, it was a lack of uniform practice and infrastructure. So what are some strengths and best practices that were identified? And again, these are all also in the report in a little bit more detail. But one of the things that we realized from the roundtable was that we weren't starting from zero, right? There were some strengths that included some counties having legal liaisons who maintain updated contact lists. There's the CPCMS notification feature, which is the Child Protection Case Management System. There's some courts do scheduling orders at the beginning of the case that have all of the hearing dates. Sometimes the attorneys at LIDOM or CASA provide a secondary notice. And then sometimes courts will reset hearings if there's deficient notice. And also some courts have time-specific, time-certain dockets. So there are models across Texas that are working well. The opportunity is scaling and aligning those practices. So the recommendations that came from the roundtable are really targeted and practical. For DFPS and the SSECs is to clarify training on the duty to provide notice, review policy, explore long-term automated solutions. For the child placing agencies, provide training to caregivers on court participation, expectations, and boundaries. For caregivers, it's to develop checklists, forms, and videos to prepare them for hearings. For judges, it's to consider time-certain docketing, address privacy protocols, and provide some pre-hearing orientation to participants. For the attorneys and the CASAs, it's to include caregiver notices in CLEs, provide that secondary notice when it's appropriate, and replicate those roundtable discussions at the local level. For the Children's Commission, it's to develop a bench card, update attorney toolkits, and partner with OCA to increase awareness of the CPCMS function. And we've actually already done that. We've already begun that process by we actually sent out a resource letter on the CPCMS notification service on December 9th of 2025. Another thing that we're going to do is work with DFPS to develop a pilot program. So next steps. This roundtable is built directly on the CFSR findings and surface both challenges and workable solutions. The next step for us is a collaborative work group with DFPS to develop a pilot program, develop some practical tools, and sustainable improvements to caregiver notice practices. In fact, we are in the process of getting everything together, and we should be sending out invitations to the work group here now in the next 2 weeks. And the goal is going to be simple, and it really is when the court asks about the child's well-being, the person who sees that child every day should reliably know about the hearing and understand how to participate safely and appropriately. This is about compliance with statute and federal requirements, but more importantly, it's about strengthening decision-making and supporting permanency for children. So if you have, please refer to the caregiver report. It has additional information about the recommendations and what we found. And I will pass it to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Brenda. Good morning again, everyone, and it is such an honor to be here with all of you this morning. And as you all know already, now I am the new Juvenile Justice Staff Attorney at the Children's Commission. As y'all are aware, the Children's Commission has historically focused on improving the legal response in child welfare cases. The child welfare system and the juvenile justice system frequently intersect because many youth who experience the child welfare system also become involved in the juvenile justice system. Through the Commission's work, a need was identified to support the members of the judiciary who handle juvenile cases. It was expressed that training and resources were lacking for these judges. After further examining this issue, the Children's Commission secured funding from the legislature for my position so that I can spearhead efforts to develop necessary training and resources. One of my first tasks after joining the Children's Commission was to convene a committee of juvenile judges from across the state. I began by identifying prominent judges in the juvenile field and inviting them to become members of the committee. Some of the judges were already known to the commission, others were new faces. We had our first meeting on February 6th of this year, and it was a rousing success. Only one committee member was unable to join us. The judges were enthusiastic about participating in the committee and sharing ideas. The priority for this committee is developing a judicial conference designed exclusively for judges with juvenile jurisdiction. So much of the first committee meeting was spent discussing logistics and curriculum for a judicial conference. The conference will take place over 2 days during the month of August, and it will be held in the Central Texas area. The commission is presently working to secure a venue and announce the conference. The Juvenile Justice Committee will meet again on March 6, 2026 to continue planning for the judicial conference. In addition to the judges-only Juvenile Justice Committee, I am in the process of creating an advisory council to further guide the commission's work in this new area. The advisory council will include a multidisciplinary group of juvenile justice professionals, such as prosecutors, defense attorneys, juvenile probation chiefs, and members of various organizations in Texas. The commission will use the advisory council to help identify priority issues, stay abreast of emerging trends, and develop training content and resources. Both the Judges Juvenile Justice Committee and the Advisory Council serve an additional purpose: bringing together members of the Juvenile Justice community. Judges and practitioners in this field often feel isolated and disconnected from their peers, especially in rural communities. They may not know who they can turn to when questions arise. The commission is endeavoring to change this by creating a network so that juvenile justice professionals can engage with and support each other. Although other organizations are already working on this, we hope to complement those efforts by engaging the judiciary and breaking down barriers to meaningful collaboration. Lastly, the commission is currently developing bench cards, which will serve as quick, easily accessible legal guides for juvenile judges. As an example, one of the bench cards will cover detention hearings. When a juvenile is taken into custody for engaging in delinquent conduct, they are not given a bond like adults. Rather, a judge presides over a detention hearing and weighs various factors that are delineated in the Texas Family Code to decide whether the child will remain in detention. The bench card will help ensure that detention hearings are conducted in accordance with best practices and that the appropriate statutory criteria are considered. Detention hearings must occur quickly. Sometimes they are required to be held on the first working day after a child is taken into custody. If the judge that normally hears juvenile cases is unavailable, then in rural jurisdictions, often a district court judge will preside over the detention hearing. That judge may not have a lot of experience with juvenile law. So the bench cards will support these judges in making the required determinations in a timely manner. Thank you all so much for this opportunity to update you on what I have been working on since joining the commission at the end of last year. And I will now turn it over to Scott Foley to discuss one of our legal practice and process strategies.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I know y'all are getting tired of seeing me. I'm celebrating my 4.5-month anniversary with the commission today. It's actually tomorrow, but thanks for being here today to celebrate with me. So I'm a grizzled veteran compared to Elizabeth here. Just some quick background on this issue, which what I'm going to talk about is the pre-petition legal representation survey report. There's heightened awareness across the nation for the need for this type of representation for families involved in child welfare matters, with the obvious goal being to prevent the need for court involvement. So in partnership with the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, Crystal Left-Quignon, Dr. Sarah Gamble and their staff, we would not have this in front of us today if it wasn't for them. The Children's Commission Legal Representation Committee developed the survey to gather information about the availability and need for pre-petition legal representation in Texas. Now, the goal of the survey is to gain a better understanding of the landscape of that type of representation for Texas children and families that are at risk of deeper involvement with DFPS than they may already be dealing with. So the scope of this survey was limited to scenarios where no cause of action has been filed by DFPS in a court. So there is no statutory right to counsel. The survey was designed for judges, attorneys who represent parents and children, attorneys who represent DFPS and SSCCs, DFPS and SSCC staff, also CASA, service providers, other folks with knowledge of the system generally. It opened on September 2nd, 2025, and the survey closed on October 15th, 2025, produced 322 responses with a varying number of responses to each question. So if you see a particular question, you say, well, that doesn't add up to 322. Everybody was not necessarily required to answer every question. Sometimes it's found that if you have to answer every question, you're going to say X out and I'm not answering anymore. So the decision was made to not make that a requirement. So that's why sometimes it won't add up to 322. So I want to start on page 5. That's where we see the roles within the child welfare system of the respondents to our survey. As you can see, we had a broad representation across disciplines and areas of knowledge. The biggest slice of the pie, 60% of survey respondents were attorneys who represent children and parents. The next largest group, 14%, were attorneys for DFPS and SSCCs. Please don't ask me to tell you what colors on there correspond with those groups. I'm lucky that color blindness wasn't part of the job application when I signed up with the Children's Commission, because I have a hard time distinguishing. But I can tell you that as you're looking at the pie chart, you see the big one, attorneys for children and parents. Next is attorneys for DFPS, SSCC. The next largest was CASA. After that, the next largest was CASA's after attorneys for DFPS, then DFPS and SSCC staff. That is the light blue, I believe. And there's a pretty good chunk of judges, actually. That's between about 10 and 11 o'clock on the pie chart. And then the smallest specifically identified category is service providers. And to the right of that, the pie slice between about 11 and 12 o'clock, those folks responded as other, but it is broken down in the report for you as to exactly what they were. It's a nice cross section because we have a retired attorney for DFPS and children and parents, legal aid hotline attorney, someone from a nonprofit, attorney who represented family members in kinship, a court coordinator, a mediator, parent liaison, an advocate, former justice, a legal assistant, and a clinical consultant. So like I said, very nice cross section. When we turn to page 6 of the report, we find the years of experience in child welfare of the respondents. And it's a significant familiarity, right at 70% reporting more than a decade of experience. So we saw that we had a very high level of experience in this type of legal representation that's responding to our survey. Obviously good because we know it's a group of very knowledgeable people that are giving us these answers. On page 7, what about the primary areas geographically of where our responses came from? Regions with more than 10 responses appear in blue. Areas with fewer than 10 are in green, and as if the category of folks who said that they practice statewide. So again, a broad group. This one geographically, there are at least 2 responses from each area of the state. Not surprisingly, the higher response rates are in urban areas, regions 3, 6, 7, and 8, which represent the 5 most populous cities in the state. So essentially at the bottom of the page, the way that breaks down, we have almost half, 47% of the responses come from urban areas. The rest are rural or mixed. And you can also see how those terms were defined. The mixed regions, a place like Region 10, which encompasses El Paso and surrounding rural counties. We have strictly rural counties with population under 100,000 and urban, San Antonio, for example. We'll flip over to page 8, and one of the things that led to the creation of the survey was that even in the Legal Representation Committee, there wasn't really a common understanding of the meaning of the term pre-petition legal representation. So one of the goals of the survey was to find out what the respondents think that means. The most chosen description, 212 respondents identified it as representation during a pending DFPS investigation. The second choice was representation during a voluntary family-based safety services case, of course, was court-ordered and involuntary. They are going to be entitled to counsel at that stage. So next was representation during an alternate response case, followed by assistance to help prevent the need for a DFPS investigation. Interestingly, 20 people said, I don't even know what it is. And so that brings us to page 9 of the survey. And what that asks is, what are the main issues? If there's going to be pre-petition legal representation, if they're addressed at that stage, what legal issues are the ones that need addressing? And these are ranked, so they were identified. You didn't have to just pick one. Substance abuse or alcohol use intervention was the top category, followed by navigating the DFPS investigation, which, as we just determined, most people thought that that's what that term pre-petition representation means. Also, family law issues, divorce, paternity, custody, financial needs, which that would include rent, utilities, SSI, SSD, TANF, WIC, SNAP, Medicaid, things like that. 5th was mental health or medical care of a parent, and 6th was criminal defense. On page 10, the respondents were asked which models of pre-petition legal representation would be most effective, and it was really a runaway choice of multidisciplinary law offices, attorneys, social workers, and paralegals. Which we've seen work well in post-petition work, but interesting that our respondents also saw value in having social workers and a multidisciplinary approach to pre-petition representation as well. The social worker theme keeps coming up. And real quickly through page 12, so we see that there is a need on page 12 for this type of representation. In fact, 78% of majority said that yes, there is that need. But on page 14 of the survey, we see that only 19% of respondents reported that any form of pre-petition representation was available in their communities. So it goes without saying that would be something that needs to be addressed to build up these types of legal services. So at this stage, it's fair to say that the survey reveals there's strong support for it. There's an identified need in communities, but like with anything else, what are the barriers? The final topic I'll cover are page 17 of the survey is concerns. And thankfully 121 of our respondents said we don't have any concerns, but the next response set of folks, 107 respondents did have concerns. And not surprisingly, the biggest chunk of that was funding. And that dovetails with question 18, which is support. What would a community need to offer pre-petition representation? Surprise, surprise. Most common identified need was funding, followed by training. So I'll wrap up. I'll note for you that there are some narrative responses that you'll see throughout the survey. They are in italics. And there's also an appendix that will show you specific narrative responses to the questions. And so you'll get a nice idea for what the folks were thinking when they answered this survey. So thank you all so much. I'll pass back to Brenda.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to be talking about the task force on evidentiary issues. And I'm going to give you a really brief overview of a new initiative. The Supreme Court recently asked the Children's Commission to study several proposed changes related to evidentiary and procedural protections in suits filed by governmental entities alleging child abuse or neglect, and to make recommendations. The study will include 4 principal areas. First, the admissibility of statements made during mental health or substance use treatment. Second, whether out-of-court allegations made by mandatory reporters should require independent corroboration before admission. Third, whether a court may draw an adverse inference from a parent's invocation of the Fifth Amendment. And fourth, discovery and disclosure obligations in governmental child welfare suits. To gather information and perspectives on these issues, the Commission will convene a time-limited task force composed of individuals representing varied roles within the child welfare system, including the judiciary, parent representation, prosecution, behavioral health, and policy analysis. The task force is advisory. Its role is to review the existing legal framework, examine constitutional and operational implications, and provide input to inform the Commission's final report to the court. The group is going to meet every other week through early June in focused, short duration sessions. Each issue will be addressed in sequence, followed by a synthesis meeting before staff prepare the final report for submission to the Supreme Court. The task force had its first meeting this past Monday on February 23rd, and our next meeting is going to be on March 11th. And we will keep the Commission updated as this work progresses. And I will pass it to Renee for training.
Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to just give you a quick update on our legal training support. Through that opportunity, the Commission provides training and technical assistance to local attorneys, judges, and advocates who serve children and families in child welfare cases. This fiscal year so far, we have been able to assist with a couple of trainings. So first, we assisted Judge Stephanie Lowe of the North Texas Child Protection Court with obtaining MCLE credit for a webinar that she hosted in January on the intersection of human trafficking and child welfare law. That was hosted on January 21st, 2026. We also just yesterday concluded with a Grimes County Child Welfare course. We provided planning, funding, and MCLE application assistance with that course, as well as on-site assistance. So I was there yesterday. The event was held in person and also had a hybrid webinar online option. There were a total of 36 registrants. 9 participated via webinar. 25 appeared in person. Additionally, we had another 5 people sign up on site that morning. This was provided to everyone for free, and topics covered included statutory duties and responsibilities of parent and child attorneys. There was an ICWA primer, a case law update, there was a motions practice session, and there was a session on PAL benefits, resources, and programs for older youth in care, and it was closed out by Judge Andrea James, Associate Judge of the 2nd Region Child Protection Court number 2, on a panel that included attorneys, CASA, and DFPS caseworker to discuss ways to think outside the box to collaboratively help families come to better outcomes. The course was approved by the State Bar of Texas for 6.25 hours of MCLE with 1.5 hours of ethics. It was also approved for TVLS certification and recertification credit in the areas of child welfare and family law. And then finally, we have assisted the Corpus Christi Bar Association with identifying speakers to provide a case law update and also a session on dealing with secondary trauma and burnout in child welfare cases. This training will occur next Friday, and we will be providing funds to cover speaker travel expenses for that event.
Our applications for legal training support are available and accepted on a rolling basis through our website. We can provide assistance on is subject to availability of our funding and our staff availability. Anyone who's interested can go to our website, or you can reach out to us at cctraining@txsports.gov for more information. And I will now hand it back to Brenda for some discussion on two of our data projects.
All right, today I'm gonna walk you through the permanency related data we gathered through the Child Welfare Judges Conference survey, and then briefly connect that information to recent CFSR findings. As you may recall, the data committee developed 4 questions for inclusion in the CWJC's registration survey, and the purpose of this overview is to highlight quickly some themes and potential areas for continued data committee work. Just quickly, just caveat that the survey does reflect the really an engaged judiciary, those judges that attend the conference, that went to the conference, and are obviously practicing specifically in this area of the law. And so we have to kind of look at this data within that frame and within that context. All right, so our first question asked was, how often do judges typically conduct permanency hearings for children and youth in the PMC and DFPS? And what we saw is that most judges reported holding hearings as needed. You can see that that's pretty big, rather than on a rigid or fixed schedule. A smaller portion indicated every 3 or 6 months, and very few reported annual hearings. The key takeaway here is flexibility. These judges are exercising discretion and tailoring frequency to the needs of the individual case, rather than applying a uniform timetable. The second question looked at factors influencing hearing frequency, starting with the age of the child. A majority of the respondents indicated that age is at least somewhat important, with a significant portion describing it as very important. While not universal, age clearly plays a role in how these judges approach hearing review timing. We then asked the same question regarding length of time in care. Here, we saw an even stronger response. Time in conservatorship carried greater weight for many judges than age alone. This suggests that duration in care is a primary driver in determining how frequently cases are revisited. So taken together, age matters, but time in care appears to matter more. Our third question asked, how often do courts request DFPS to change a permanency goal? The majority reported doing so occasionally or rarely, rather than routinely. This indicates selective judicial intervention. Judges are willing to request changes, but typically do so when the facts clearly warrant it, rather than as a standard practice. The final question invited narrative responses, particularly focused on youth who have been in care 24 months or longer. The question asked was for children and youth in DFPS conservatorship 24 plus months. How do you determine if the permanency goal is appropriate and achievable? And several themes emerged. Judges emphasized case-by-case reviews, child-centered reviews. They referenced stability, well-being, the express wishes of the child, permanent stability, placement stability, DFPS efforts, and some stakeholder perspectives. Another recurring theme was ensuring that permanency goals remained realistic and achievable, rather than aspirational or disconnected from current circumstances. So why does this matter? First, it reflects that engaged judiciary that I was telling you about that is actively overseeing permanency. Second, it highlights strengths in individualized decision-making. And third, it suggests opportunities to support timely permanency outcomes and potential areas for collaboration between the courts and DFPS. When we looked at how these survey themes aligned with the Federal Child and Family Services Review, We looked at first at item 5, which focuses on permanency goal appropriateness. Here, Texas was rated a strength in roughly 62% of reviewed cases. But the review still identified situations where goals remained longer than circumstances supported, or where delays in goal changes contributed to permanency delays. Responsibility in these instances was noted as shared between DFPS and the courts. Item 6 of the CFSR addresses achieving timely permanency. This is traditionally one of the more challenging measures. Identified delay drivers included worker turnover, documentation and process barriers, and legal or scheduling delays. Importantly, judges were generally viewed as thoughtful, but sometimes deferential to agency goals. When we placed the survey responses next to the CFSR findings, several key takeaways emerged. Again, judicial engagement is strong within these respondents. Individualized review is a strength. At the same time, selective intervention, while appropriate in many circumstances, may contribute to delay if goals are not reassessed in a timely manner. And this is just an observation that highlights where support tools or shared practices might be helpful. Based on these discussions, based on these considerations that we placed above, and these are some of the things that we asked ourselves during our meeting on January 13th, which included, so what tools or data would be most helpful to judges? Where is greater consistency or clarity needed? And what practices are already working that could be shared or expanded? And really, what can the courts and DFPS do to collaborate more effectively? And then based on these discussions, the data committee is considering potential supportive resources. These include a bench level tool to assist judges in evaluating the appropriateness of permanency goals, a resource identifying strategies that may decrease time to permanency, and training focused on goal reassessment during permanency hearings. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in the data committee. And I will pass it to Patrick.
It's me standing between you and lunch, so we're gonna make this really quick. So on tab 4 of your meeting notebook is our financial document. There's really not a whole lot to update you on because just where we're at in the fiscal year, you can see that by the amount of expenditures that we've had to date. There's one thing I'd like to mention since we voted at the last commission meeting on the budget. We did increase $9,000 in systems improvement, and that went to this task force on evidentiary issues that Renee mentioned. But other than that, nothing in the budget that has changed since our last meeting. When we meet again in May, we will have the results of our interim progress reports from our grantees. Those templates will be going out to them in April, and we'll cover that half of the year. So we'll have some more filled in here on the expenses to date in May, and also some updates on what our grantees are doing with the funding that was provided at FY26. So with that, I'll pass it back to the judge.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you all for that wonderful update. We certainly appreciate hearing from you and all the excellent work that the commission is doing. So thank you very much. And having said that, we're all hungry, so let's go eat. Feel free to get your lunch and then come back here. We are going to resume at 12:30, even though we're just a few minutes behind, if we could, because a lot of people have schedules and need to get out. So if we could do that, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll get started here in just a second.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to hear from one of my favorite entities, the Office of Court Administration. And Megan could not be here today. And so we have Jeffrey Sunakoa. Where's Jeffrey? There he is. Thank you for being here.
Justice Lerman. Justice Lerman said, my name is Jeffrey Sinikawa. I'm the Director of Court Services at the Office for Administration. Megan could not be here, and sort of our approach at OCA is to divide and conquer because there's so few of us and so many groups that we want to be present at. I'm just going to give some brief updates on some of the projects we've been working on at OCA and a couple of items related to this group that might be of interest. First item I want to mention was in the area of judicial security. Last session, there were several bills that were passed by the legislature that were related to judicial security for judges, for court staff, and what have you. And so the first one is House Bill 5081. That bill gave OCA the direction to procure a service or a software that would remove judges' personal identifying information from the internet. So in layman's terms, if you Google Rob Hoffman on the internet and see the amount of things that come up in your search results, it's not because Judge Hoffman wanted those things out there, it's because there's services that scrape and put information out there. There are many companies, private companies out there that actually have software and services and people that will go out and remove that information and scrape that information so it's not out there. So we're right in the middle of a procurement. That request for offers just closed on Monday to find a vendor that would actually provide those services. The services will be free for judges in the state of Texas. So we're very excited about that and to be able to offer that. And again, that's to scrape the internet and online databases to remove personal identifying information.
And are the judges gonna need to request that?
That's correct. We'll send out communication to all the judges on how to work with the vendor and just get set up. It's very easy for registering, and you do have to provide a base amount of personal information so they know what they're looking for to scrape the internet. But the companies that we're aware of have a very high success rate across the country, both at the state and federal level. So we're excited for that bill. The bill also actually made the display of personal identifying information for judges a criminal offense. So there's actually in the statutes now requirements that these things be removed within 10 days upon request, and there's actually civil and criminal remedies for violating those requests. So we've actually working with the successful vendors so that when they do make these requests on behalf of the judges, that if these services do not follow the request, that we can actually follow up with some legal actions. Also related to judicial security, most of the judges are aware that the Julie Kasurik Act that was passed about 9 years ago provided a lot of privacy protections for judges. It allows for staff in my division to actually work with county and state agencies that hold personal information such as the appraisal's office, voter registration, Department of Licensing. Judges can actually request that we work with them and have their personal information removed from public access. Because anyone from the public can go into these databases and look for anyone's name who is in there and find their home address and other identity information. So that's been in effect for about 9 or 10 years now. House Bill 16 passed, and that actually extends those same protections to court and clerk staff. We recognize that judges these days aren't the only ones that are in danger of the public taking advantage of their personal information in these volatile settings. So staff for courts and judges will not have those same protections, as well as our agency. So we've been working for the last several months to develop instructions for all of those different methodologies of having that information removed. We'll be publishing those instructions in the next month or two so that people can actually take advantage of those protections. Staff will actually have to take advantage of those protections on their own. We don't have the resources to assist them in that, but we'll have very detailed instructions and videos on how to take advantage of those privacy protections. Moving on to performance measurements, at the last commission meeting, I was able to give some updates on some of our changes in collecting more and more data from across the state, and on performance metrics. In this last session, we were directed to collect even more data on performance metrics for our district and county courts. This includes clearance rates for our courts, age of acting pending caseload, and age of cases exposed. The legislature is very interested in those metrics to see how well our judges and our courts are performing across the state. As you can imagine, collecting this data from 254 counties, from all the clerks in the state, is incredibly difficult. It's something that we've been doing for many years, but at a much more simpler level. And our success rate in getting consistent reporting has never been where we would like it to be. So this last session, we requested 11 FTEs. In our office, we call them our data rangers, but they are called regional data coordinators. We actually borrowed this idea from the state of South Carolina. These staff are actually assigned to one to each of the 11 judicial regions in the state to work specifically with court clerks, with the district and county clerk, with judges, and with court coordinators to help them with their reporting on all of their cases and their statistics. It's a very, it can be a very complicated process of what actually happens in a court and what's reported to the clerk and then what's reported to us. And that could be anything from the way things are tracked to antiquated systems to just reporting that just isn't where it should be. And so Megan wanted me to emphasize that for the first time in the history of our agency, we have 100% of the reports across the state into us. So we feel like the investment of these staff working with the courts and the clerks across the state has paid off. We've given an update to the legislature. They're very excited that we're starting to see some real-time data and that we can start looking at trends across the state in a reliable fashion. Last time I was here, I mentioned our efforts on a new statewide case management system for specialty courts. Again, this is for the statutorily defined specialty courts, your mental health courts, your adult drug courts, your veterans treatment courts. I've also mentioned that we've decided to include in that our OCA child support courts and child protection courts. So for those who aren't aware, those 73 courts across the state are under the jurisdiction of OCA, and those judges are employees of OCA. Our systems are running on fumes these days, particularly with the retirement of the only programmer we had to support the systems. So it's critical that CPCMS and CSCMS are replaced. Specialty courts across the state, it's not unusual for those courts to record their data in Excel or even spiral bound notebooks. So to provide them with a state-funded, robust case management system will be important. This will give us an opportunity to really look at the impacts and the success of specialty court dockets in our trial courts. It'll also give us an opportunity to have even more robust data for our child protection courts and our child support courts. We do collect a lot of data now, and the data is useful. The systems could just use quite a bit of a tune-up. So we are in the middle of that process now. We hope to get a request for offers out hopefully around June of this year and get the contracts in place by fall. We start to have that system built and maybe in place by the end of next year. It might seem very far off, but the next legislative session is about 9 to 10 months away. We are already incredibly busy preparing for next legislative session. Under the leadership of Justice Blacklock, the Judicial Council has kicked off the work of its committees. Traditionally, the committees meet between sessions to talk about priority legislation for the next session. Justice Blacklock has assigned 4 committees for Judicial Council to focus on particular areas. One is on data, which I think will be just a very concurrent committee in the future. Another is on judicial resources, a very broad category, but there's a lot that will fall into that, including judicial security. Family representation is third committee of the Chief Justice. And I don't think in my 8 years I've seen a family representation focus of the council, so we're very excited about that. And then the last committee will be looking at judicial compensation and judicial retirement. So those committees are scheduled to meet here in the next month. A lot of our staff will be working with the committees to help them do a lot of the investigatory work on the topics they would like to see. The council will then reconvene this fall, probably around September, to make some final recommendations for possible action, just in time for early filing in November, and then the kickoff of our next legislative session early next year. Those are just a few highlights of projects we're working on. We've got many other things in the pipeline. We're doing a study on supported decision-making. We're doing a study on digital court reporting. We're still implementing case level data. We are replacing our case management system for our state appellate courts. So that will be happening. We're still working with the brand new business courts, who just celebrated their 1-year anniversary. So we're still supporting them and working out a lot of the process keys. And then we're in the middle of a statewide procurement for statewide bail system. So again, those are just a few highlights of the work that we're doing at the Office of Court Administration. We're happy to be of service and support the Children's Commission as well. Marcus is typically the face that you'll see at most of the commission meetings and most of the commission work. So very happy to have him on board and support the work of the commission as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work that you all do. We know that you put a lot into the judiciary and we all appreciate it very much. Any questions? Okay. So a good friend of mine just walked in. I was like, what's she doing here? Okay, we're going to hear now from the department. Ms. Benduelas is going to, I guess, address us one last time. So don't cry, but you can cry if you want to. But we certainly appreciate hearing from the department. I know that I continuously hear how much improvement is being made in the department, you know, all the time. And I think people are really recognizing that. I certainly hope so. And thank you for always working hard with very difficult situations to make things better. So thank you.
Thank you. So today I'm going to give you, first, thank you for giving me another opportunity to address you today. Today I'm going to be walking you through the updates in Child Protective Services and the highlights that have to do with our new annual plan that is now posted, and talk to you a little bit about some concentrations of the plan that we're really working hard on every division stage of service, and that really has to do with strengthening families through a lot of very meaningful engagement. I think today we heard a lot about, you know, what a difference engagement can do. So our annual plan has very intentionally focused on meaningful engagement and really looking at services and also the supports that we are giving our families and children that interact with us. So the annual plan's title, thank you. So the annual plan title is Empowering, Strengthening, and Supporting Families Throughout all of CPS. This annual plan will highlight the department's commitment to all the families. And you'll hear me repeat a lot of words because they're important words that you are going to be hearing from our staff and as we go out and engage parents and stakeholders. Strengthening families is at the heart of DFPS efforts, recognizing that the well-being of children, families, and vulnerable adults is best supported when families are active partners and they are involved in the process. So for this plan, families thrive when they are active participants in decision-making. That means that our parents and our children that are interacting with our system or are in the system, they are the experts of their lives, and we need to listen and we need to meet them where they are at.
We are really going to be prioritizing and looking at where our services are coming from, how can we give our families earlier access to services, and how can we find them better supportive interventions that can really impact their well-being. So the plan really consists of 3 goals. The first one is the one I mentioned, strengthening families through meaningful engagement and services and support. The second goal is to develop and refine our case management system. That's going to be a huge undertaking. And third, to transform the workforce and infrastructure in order to enable us to better achieve outcomes for families and children. Today, I'm going to only address goal 1. And to strengthen these families, we are going to need to focus on really 3 pillars, and that is going to be meaningful family engagement, community involvement, and making sure that we are able to have behavioral health supports. These 3 pillars will be able to guide us in the work that we are doing, and also most importantly, guide us in how we support families when they are facing crisis, when they are having issues, when they feel like nobody else is supporting them. It'll be really important for us to not just engage them, but to make sure that they have outside support other than what we are giving them. As you heard earlier, making sure that they continue to stay connected to those services in the community is extremely important for the children to be able to continue to stay in the home, which is what we want. So these areas, these 3 pillars really are to support prevention, reduce removals, and also promote stability. As part of goal 1, we're implementing several strategies to deepen family engagement. This includes strengthening meaningful engagement during investigations, during family-based safety services, during our conservatorship cases. And we're really looking at improving the timelines that we work with families, how we safety plan with families, and really, again, just making sure that our staff are coordinating the right services in a meaningful, speedy way so that our families can start receiving what they need. It hopefully will help us improve timeliness and clarity of what safety planning is, increase early cross-stage coordination. So it is really important if we want to have meaningful engagement with families internally, we also have to do that between investigations, conservatorship, our legal department, our judges. And I always say it's a parallel process. It starts here and it goes to the field, right? So we're cross-collaborating at our level, then that all goes down to even better work with families. So, and then of course, we are really working at developing new training and having some tools that will consistently focus on that engagement and the outcomes that we want to be achieving for families and children. In 2026, we are expanding and supporting kinship placements. That will continue to be a major focus for us. We know children do better when they can remain connected to family. We're strengthening early identification of relatives, and that includes focusing on first placement at the time of removal. We know that it is a very traumatic experience for children to be removed, and if we can place them with a relative immediately, that would be the least restrictive, and that hopefully helps us achieve better outcomes for that child. We're also going to be expanding supports such as caregiver education and behavioral health services, and launching a statewide kinship awareness campaign to ensure families know what resources are available. So we have already done a lot of work through Writer 40, where we went back and we revamped all of our kinship manuals. We've updated all the resources for our families. We started a video series that are part of our kinship collaboration group actually helped us put together. So it is done by kinship caregivers that have lived experience. We thought that was really important. And we're also starting a podcast where we are going to have kinship caregivers come on and talk about what were the challenges, what would have been helpful, what do they recommend, what it looked like for them, what supports do they need. And so we're really excited to launch that podcast. We are also going to be using FGDM. We've always used FGDM. However, we really want to make sure that as we're having those meetings, that it truly, truly is family-led, that the family is engaged, that we focus on bringing in additional supports for the family. Yes, maybe somebody can't be placement, but somebody might be able to drive the parents or the children where they need to be in order for that kinship placement to continue to be. So we want to be very intentional about making sure that it's not the parent just by themselves and CPS during those FGDM meetings. The whole meaningful piece of FGDM is the collaboration piece. And so if we want to collaborate, we have to make sure that we have service providers, that we have kinship givers, that we have attorneys, that we have people that can be meaningful supports for the family and the children. So last year we made very meaningful progress in strengthening kinship care. We expanded outreach and education, as I just spoke about. We also broadened the eligibility for kinship daycare assistance. We streamlined licensing process. As you all are aware, those just changed not too long ago. And so we have already started working on efforts on how we can increase our unverified kinship caregivers to being verified. We also had some plans that really worked on really engaging the kinship caregivers. If we couldn't do it at first placement, then we were going to do it right after the child's coming into care. And so we were able to actually see a great improvement in 6 months. We had started in about, we were at about 35-40% at some point, and our goal was to be at 45 at least by January, and we actually met that in December of 2025. And so now as we move forward, our goal will continue to keep going. Even if we get to 50, we want to get to 60, we want to get to 70. Our priority is kinship caregivers. And with that, the other priority that comes with that is going to get kinship caregivers to the verification process. We are going to be working hand in hand with our CPAs. We are going to be working very closely with our kinship caregivers to make sure that they have the support that they need to get to the verification process. We know that when they are verified, they get more financial assistance, they get additional training, and most importantly, they have a whole new network with the CPI that can really help them. So we are going to have some very strong efforts around engaging our kinship caregivers and supporting them. So our vision for family engagement is really about improving outcomes across the entire system, as I mentioned. Stronger, meaningful engagement means, like I mentioned, fewer removals, more participation in services, quicker progress towards permanency, positive permanency. I think she made a really good point. It needs to be positive permanency and more sustainable long-term outcomes. When families feel respected, informed, and included, children experience more stability and connection. This year, we are defining very clearly what consistent, meaningful family engagement looks like. across all of our different programs. We are building on the strengths of the CFE model that we've worked with for a really long time. And we are also looking for other models that can really provide our workers with toolkits that they can use to engage those families. Family decision-making is one of those models, again, as I mentioned earlier, that we're really looking at how are we doing our work and how can we do it better? And CFE is actually a part of the FGDM process. So we will continue to explore what other models can we be doing to do the work better. So, and this is, so I just want to mention that this focus of the annual plan, we know we cannot do this without our SSCC partners. And so whatever toolkits we build, whatever models we find in terms of working efforts towards that meaningful engagement, increasing kinship, increasing verification, in all of that, we are partnering with our SSCCs and we will support them and we will share information, we will share data. They already have access to a lot to continue to move in that direction. So to bring all of this together and to really bring all of this to life, several concrete actions are underway. We're developing updated curriculum that centers around using the family voice first, enhancing family group decision-making, and using our approach to how are we service planning with families? Are we putting 8 tasks for them to do in day 1? Or are we really using our family needs assessment and really focusing first on the top 2 things that need to be done? I think somebody earlier mentioned, you know, in order for therapy to be effective, you're not going to be effective in therapy if you are still using drugs regularly and you're going into your sessions high. It doesn't work that way. Or if you have some pretty severe mental health issues that are untreated, putting that person into a parenting class is a waste of time because they're having a mental crisis that we have to deal with first instead of sending them to the drug treatment or instead of sending them to, like I mentioned, a parenting class. So we want to be very, very intentional, and we are going to do some training with our staff, and we more than want to partner with the commission on really exploring, really looking at those service planning and not putting a task and really concentrate on what are the top 2 things. And when these 2 top things are done, then we can actually move on to the others because they are now, you know, they've gotten some treatment for the major issue. And so that is one of our biggest goals. If we really want to take the family's voice and we really want to do that meaningful engagement, we need to listen to them and we need to listen to what are their needs. Because when we put 5 or 6 things on the service plan, I gotta be honest, I think it would be really difficult for me to concentrate on all 6 when I'm still dealing with mental health and I'm still, you know, abusing substances and I don't have the support that I need. And so really, we are hoping for a partnership with the judiciary on that, with the parents' attorneys, with the ad litems. And we're really looking forward to working from that approach or to starting to work from that approach. And then the other thing is that in order to support our families, we are really looking, of course, at being family-centered, being trauma-informed, and really working from collaborative models of practice. We owe that to our families. And I was just telling somebody that whenever we work on engaging families, we really have to be very humble in the work that we do. They are the experts, even though we have the degrees, we're the experts, and they allow us to come into the most sacred spaces and they talk to us about their deepest secrets that nobody wants to talk about their trauma. And so I really believe that continuing to focus and develop our staff on that meaningful engagement is going to be I think it's really going to even increase our outcomes to be better. We always have room for improvement, but I also think that we owe it to our families and our children to always try to continue to educate, always try to continue to look at new ways of doing things. We cannot continue to do the same thing over and over and expect different outcomes. So we are really looking forward to the implementation. There's a lot more different things that we are doing with this plan. This is only 2 things out of everything else that we are doing. So we are super excited. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for always, in spite of all the criticism, rising above it and really trying to do what you can to help these families sincerely and instead of reacting defensively. So thank you very much. Okay, so we've set aside some time to hear from our commissioners, to hear about what you all want to talk about, maybe what you want to hear about. Maybe something that we want to, focus on at our next meeting. And so I open it up for that now.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I really, I'm Luann Southern with the department, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize Erica Banuelos. I know that you all work in communities. Some of you work at the state level, but every day I get to work with Erica. And what is unseen is her commitment to individual children. We have staffing sometimes at the department about children who have significant needs because of their trauma. They need to access behavioral health services. They need to access other types of placements. And I will tell you, this woman right here is a champion for those children. I have watched her advocate on their behalf. And I just want you to know that, because I know she's not going to be on the commission anymore, but I have so appreciated working with her at state office and her commitment to kids, because it's really profound. So anyway.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Just a couple of things. So during the last legislative session, you may know that a bill was passed to create Terrell Center for Youth. That will be a 30-bed residential facility operated by HHSC, the Health and Human Services Commission, in Terrell. And it will be set aside specifically for youth in DFPS conservatorship. There will be 30 beds. 20 of those beds will be for boys and 10 will be for girls. And we are working with the Health and Human Services Commission on establishing the admission criteria, discharge criteria. There are some rules that need to be revised. Those are going to be published, I believe, in March for public comment. I can't remember if it's March, what day, but anyway, those will be coming up for posting. We are very excited about that because these are the youth with high acuity that many of you on the bench see regularly, who have significant mental health needs. Some of them have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And many of these children, because of their needs, end up in intermittent placements, off and on, in inpatient facilities, then a residential facility, then another inpatient. And they desperately need to be in a safe and stable environment to be able to get the treatment they need to begin to heal from their trauma. And so we are very excited about having this available to our children in the FPS conservatorship as a place for them to go to get the treatment they need. I will tell you that the Health and Human Services Commission has been a huge partner with us. They have worked with us very well on this. They've been partners through and through, wanting to be able to set up a place that will truly address the needs of these children. And maybe during our next commission meeting, maybe we would like to hear from them so they can talk to you a little bit more about that. They provided some information to the Texas Alliance so that their provider network would also be aware of kind of the status of that facility and what's going to be happening in the future. It is set to open in September of this year. And so again, we're just really thrilled that those children will have a place to go.
And also, I just also wanted to mention that, because of the role that I have, my job is really to help make sure that children in foster care have access to behavioral health services. And you all know as well as I do how hard that can be sometimes. Especially, and we talked earlier about rural Texas and how difficult it is for individuals in rural areas to access the behavioral health services they need. And so we set up on a regular basis meetings with different partners across the state to talk about those things. So for example, we have a regular cadence of meetings with the Texas Alliance so that we can jointly talk about the behavioral health needs of children in foster care. How can we partner together to try to address those needs? We also will begin in March meetings with the Texas Council, which is the organization responsible for overseeing, it's like a trade association for the local mental health authorities and the local intellectual and developmental disability authorities, so that we can begin to look at partnerships. How can we do better at the local level for crossing over the needs of children in our care who have behavioral health issues? I also just want to applaud the commission for engaging the juvenile justice area. We meet regularly with the Texas Juvenile Justice Department because children in child welfare cross over into juvenile justice. Many of those children have children's mental health needs as well. So those three systems actually have to work in sync and in partnership with each other in order for our children to be able to get their needs met at the local level. And so I really want to applaud the commission for that. We have a very wonderful relationship with our juvenile justice partners at the state and have been working with them a lot on the issues around behavioral health services and access to care. So I just wanted to applaud the commission for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who else? I have something, and that is, there was a lot said today about the need for social work. And so is there something we can do to look into that?
She's looking at me.
Jamie?
Well, yes, of course. The answer is yes. We have talked about this for a really long time in our legal representation committee about the value of a multidisciplinary law office and what it can do in a child welfare case. And we talk regularly with TIDC about it, the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. I know Catherine McAnally's here and she's working on drawing down Title IV money through a grant from the Children's Commission. That's one of the things that could be done to enhance the quality of legal representation, is hiring a social worker for a law office. We also hope to support the Judicial Council's efforts around family representation and have provided them with previous legal representation study and the task force on court-appointed legal representation report as well. So we'll continue those conversations in the Legal Representation Committee. I'm fortunate that the chair can help us through that. And we've got our Legal Practice and Process Chair here, and then Judge John Eck is our LRC Chair. So we'll bring it to them to ask them to take another look at it, to what we can do to make sure that this is promulgated throughout the entire state.
And I hope that OCA, in that third thing that you all talked about, that you were looking at, having to do with representation, can look at it not just from an appellate level, but from the trial level. Because I think my understanding is that it's being looked at more from an appellate level. And being an appellate judge, I mean, I see the need. Having been a trial judge for many, many years, I think there's a greater need there. If we're really going to, certainly in this area, if we're really going to help children and families, it's at the trial level where we need that. And I'll be glad to visit with Megan or whomever. And I visit with the chief all the time, although not about this, but I will. But that's my view of it. Anyway. You know? Oh, yes.
So there's a few updates I want to talk about at the University of Texas that we're doing that I think people in this commission will find interesting. One is that we are beginning the process to conduct a landscape analysis for the Texas Foster Youth Network. This is a collaboration between our institute at UT as well as the Texas Workforce Commission to develop a statewide resource for young people who are in foster care or young adults that have left foster care to be able to call in or chat or text with young people that are going to be working this to help coordinate services and find resources, no matter where they are in the state. And so we're conducting a landscape analysis and talking with a lot of folks in the community, a lot of providers, caseworkers, people who have lived in foster care. And eventually we're going to find our way to talking with the judiciary. So hopefully some of these folks here will be interested in speaking with some of our research team on this topic. We are also hiring an outreach coordinator. We're specifically looking for somebody that has lived experience. And so if you have somebody in mind, feel free to reach out to me and I'll send you the job posting for them. This is the person who's going to be in charge of coordinating with all the young people we're going to be hiring. And so one of the really cool things about this project is that we're hiring a bunch of people that have lived experience to work with other young people that are also either in care or recently out of care to be able to help build that connection, to help them access the resources that they need. Another thing that we're working on is that we are working with the governor's office to start to support paid internships at state agencies. And so I have 4 students that are in my program at UT that are kind of in this pilot phase that are working at TxDOT. And so they actually are starting next week at the Texas Department of Transportation in paid internship, where they're getting paid a pretty good amount. And we hope to not only figure out the formula for success for doing this, but also to scale it to other state agencies and other parts of the state. In the summer, we have summer conferences for teenagers in foster care. We put on, it's a very big thing. It takes a lot of effort. I'm very happy I get to do this. But if you have young people between the ages of 14 to 18 or so that you would like to send to UT for 3 days to learn about their future, have some fun, get to see what a college campus is like, feel free to reach out to me and we'll see if we can make an exception and get some of those young people there. And lastly, I have four of my students from my program are also graduating this semester, which I'm very happy to see. And if you all remember from the commission meeting that we had in February, some of my young people came to talk. And one of those, if you remember the girl Sierra, she was one of the people who talked, she was accepted into multiple med schools. And so she's now going to be enrolled and eventually become a doctor. So just an update from those folks.
Wonderful.
That's just a little bit about what's going on at UT, lots of really great things, and I'm very privileged to be able to do this with my students.
Well, being a WT alumni, I'm very proud of that. Thank you for that very much. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that Judge Angelica Jimenez is here. Could you please stand for us?
Hello,
There she is.
everyone. Would you like me to?
Yeah, introduce yourself.
My name is Angelica Jimenez. I preside over the 408 District Court in Bexar County, Texas. I also am one of the co-presiding judges over Pearls Court. We help girls between the ages of 14 and 18 who are about to age out of care and are under the care of the department. So it is something that we really enjoy doing. Judge Rosie Alvarado is usually the one that is here. She is the other co-presiding judge over Pearls, and that's why I get to be with you all today.
Thank you so much for being here, Judge. Thank you very much. And unfortunately, Judge Graves Harrington had to leave us early. It is her birthday today. And so I just wanted us all to acknowledge that. So she's a wonderful person and going through some challenging times. So very happy to celebrate her birthday with her, at least in thought. Okay, we have a few people who have signed up to speak to us from Collaborative Council, and Julia Hatcher is first. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi all, my name is Julia Hatcher. For those who don't know me, I'm the president of the Texas Association of Family Defense Attorneys. I'll try to speak up because I know I'm really soft voice. Really the only thing I wanted to talk to you about today is this came to our attention last month. One of our members in East Texas sent this document to me and asked me if it was legal. I'm just gonna pass it around so you all can take a look at it, and I'm sorry for the copy. It was a picture, text picture, and it didn't come out very well, but what it is, it's, and to give you some background, I had seen this before when Dean Rucker was the jurist in residence for the commission, probably, I don't know, 2016 or 2017. And I had given it to him. I had given this to him at the time. And then I never heard anything more about it. So I assumed he said or did something. But last month I got it again. So what it says, it's a form, it's called Acknowledgement of Conditions for Appointment of Attorney for Indigent Parent. And it requires the parent to agree to maintain contact with court-appointed counsel and attend statutorily required hearings, or the failure to do so may result in findings by the court that include but are not limited to the following: consent to removal of court-appointed counsel, consent to appointment of the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services as temporary managing conservatorship of the children, the subject of the suit. Excuse me. Consent to withdraw any discovery request or waiver of request for jury trial. Consent to allow the petitioner, the department, to proceed to a final hearing, which may result in termination of my parental rights. By signing this acknowledgement, I have read and understand the information set out in this document. Now, I don't know if some of you use it. I don't know if some of you seen it. It's pretty disturbing to me. And I think it's probably constitutionally a problem. But anyway, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So if you wanted to address it, you could. That's all I have.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was that something that you were told the judges are using, or that a lawyer for the?
No, the judges.
Like, the judges were using. Oh.
I can understand kind of the incentive that you want to get parents there, but I don't really think this is the way to do it. So, anyway. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Julia.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we have Kristen Bell, who's here for Texas Lawyers for Children.
Hello, I'm blessed to be here this morning. It was very informative and inspiring to see different faces that I don't get to see very often, so thank you for that. So I'm Kristen Bell. When I checked in the hotel yesterday, they asked if I was the Kristen Bell. And he said you elect me. He's debatable, but I just went with it, you know. I don't think that's true. But anyway, so it's memorable at least. All right, so I just want to tell you about a few new things we've got going on with Texas Lawyers for Children. We have a few new programs. Really, if you've known about our organization for a while, you know that we have an online center, serves judges and attorneys. And our focus has kind of, in the last, 5 or so years, been really on, training regarding trauma and mental health of children. And also, we want to do what we can to help the issues right now with new people coming into the practice of child protection law, and how can we support that. We also have some other initiatives around education and things. So those are just some things that, light our fire and that we hope we get to share with other people. So I want to tell you just about 3 programs that tie to that. The first one is we have now, this is for judges and attorneys, but we've now added mental health discussion boards to our online center. So we've contracted with mental health professionals. This is for any judge or attorney throughout Texas can use it for free. We've contracted with mental health professionals who can answer questions. So I thought it was timely with the presentation that happened earlier, because someone who didn't have access to that level of resources or advocacy knowledge can ask that question and maybe find out that the behavior is trauma-based, and start advocating for that, or maybe be able to recommend appropriate MDR after speaking with a mental health professional. So we just want people to know that's available. The second thing is we have now started office hours, and it is for attorneys, especially new to the field or with novel questions. We're opening up from 12 to 1 every Thursday. As much as possible, we'll hope to have a practitioner that is actually practicing child welfare law right now, one of our research attorneys who knows I think everything there is to know about child welfare law, and then education kind of experience. For a quick example, someone came on the other day, they had a child who was moving daycare over and over because of behaviors. And so we really spent 30 minutes coming up with lots of different solutions, looking at, well, are they, what treatments are they getting? Looking at, is the daycare following all of their guidelines? And even looking at, the child is like 3 or 4. Are there child find obligations where maybe this child should be moving into public school now, like with speech services or stuff like that? So those are just kind of the things. We've done timing for appeals. We've done how to contact a child who's placed out of state, just different things like that. There's no question that's what we wanted it to be. There's no question that is, a bad question, because we know that as attorneys, we're always too nervous to not ask a smart question, and we want it to be okay. And then the last thing is that we trained over, nearly 2,000 judges and attorneys in Texas regarding trauma. And we're gonna open that up soon to non-attorneys, a portion of it, some won't apply, but we're gonna open a portion of that. So if you'd like to learn about any of those things, the handout kind of tells you how you can get involved. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that report, Kristen. We appreciate it. Okay, so is there any new business? Anything we haven't covered that we should cover? Okay, please mark on your calendar that our next meeting is going to be virtual. It's going to be on May the 8th. Then our next in-person meeting is going to be on September the 18th. Our final meeting of the year will be November the 6th. And until our next meeting, enjoy a beautiful spring, and thank you all for being here.